We're looking for a drum roll here.
I thought, what am I missing?
What's missing?
What's missing? Oh my
iPad.
God. I'm losing my mind. I'm becoming my mother.
Where's your mom? I haven't seen
She
her.
lost mine.
On that note, we are live. Teresa just confessed something. Welcome everyone to our Prescott Town Council meeting for Monday, July 18th, 2022, a very rainy Monday. But I'd like to welcome everyone and begin the meeting with our usual call to order. We'll begin this meeting of council by acknowledging that we're meeting on Aboriginal land that hasn't been inhabited by Indigenous peoples. In particular, we'd like to acknowledge the traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat, Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabeg, and the Oneida and Haudenosaunee peoples. Moving right on to item 2 tonight, that's the usual approval of the agenda. Recommendation is that the agenda for the council meeting of July 18th, 2022 be approved as amended. And just to make sure I've got the amendment correct, Lindsay, it's just the movement of that one item, or?
Yeah,
It's
we'll
just-
move the purchase and sale up to 18.1 and the acceptance of the closed session minutes 18.2.
Yeah, we're just going to switch those around because we do have someone potentially speaking on that 18.1 matter. So just make it a little more amenable for the guest. If everyone's okay with that, can I ask for a move on that amended agenda? Councilor McConnell, seconding Councilor Ostrander. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Thanks, everyone. Item 3, declarations of interest. Any declarations from anyone this evening? We're seeing no. 4 presentations, we have none. 5 delegations, we have none. 6 minutes of our previous council meetings. We do have under 6.1, that's the recommendation reads that the council minutes dated June 20th, 2022 be accepted as presented. That's of course our meeting last month. Could I have a mover, please? By Councilor Burton, seconded by Councilor Young. Any discussion on that set of minutes? No, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carried. And 6.2, we did have another special meeting from June 29th this past month. That's a meeting of the tri-councils, ourselves, Augusta and Edwardsburg Cardinal. We all passed those minutes as we move forward in each council. So the recommendation reads that the tri-council minutes dated June 29th, 2022 be accepted as presented. Could I ask for a mover, please? Moved by Councilor Ostrander, seconded by Councilor Shankar. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion is carried. 7, communications and petitions. Nothing formally there this evening. Under 8, we do have under the consent reports. Do have a number of items there. So I'll ask before we begin, does anyone want to separate these in the motion and speak to them completely separately? Councilor McConnell.
I just have a question on one of them, and I'm sure it's something that staff can quickly clear up, but it's something that wasn't clear to me.
Yeah,
And
sure.
that's number 2.
Okay, well, if it's not, if we don't have to address it as something formal with a motion change or whatever, and if it's not, so we can probably proceed with that recommendation then and then open it up for quick discussion of the 3. So I would ask for someone to move that all items listed under the consent report section of tonight's agenda be accepted as presented. Moved by Councilor Burton, seconded by Councilor Jansman. So open it up for comments, questions, and go to Councilor McConnell, please.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. Item 2 there is approved BIA committee meeting minutes, May 10th, 2022. And the digital, in those minutes, it mentions that the digital Main Street coordinator contract had a 2-year extension, and I don't recall that floating past here, and I was just wondering if we could have a little clarity on it.
Yeah, I think I can't remember the timing, but that did arise. I don't know, Dana, did you take care of that? Did you let us know about that or give us a
Yes, I don't
background?
recall what council meeting it actually would have come forward at, but I do recall that we had updated council as to.
It wasn't the contract renewal, it was the 2-year. That's the part that I didn't recall.
If you'd like. May I go ahead?
Can you go ahead?
So, sorry, I'm not even sure. Is that Matthew?
Yes.
Hello, Matthew.
Hello, how are you today?
Good, fine, good. I hope you're feeling better. Did you have a response to that?
Yes, absolutely. So I believe in February, the digital Main Street funding came to an end. Then we had 1 month of funding from the Grenville Futures organization. And then Digital Main Street came out with a brand new program towards the end of April, which they backdated to the beginning of April. And it's for a 2-year funding window this time. So that we did discuss that kind of in February, March, and then in April. And we were very lucky to be able to extend our current coordinator for the 2 years, which fit well within the overall parameters of the new program. So that was kind of the timing, but absolutely, we're very happy that we're able to continue that program, and then it's solidified for 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Armstrong. Anything further, Councilor McConnell?
No, that's good news. It's just a credit to my poor memory. Thank you very much. And Matthew?
Thank you, Councilor McConnell. Councilor Jansman, did you have
No, not at all. Matthew covered it. Thank you.
Okay, on the other items, we do have the information package, the staff report, the projects update, and of course, an update on the second promenade installation that is coming up at that last weekend of this month leading into the August holiday. Any discussion on any of the other items? There is one quick one I just would like, if Nathan, if I could ask you, just because we get asked about this all the time, the progress report on the arena. Could you just give us a little bit of the background there, essentially what's on page 19 there of the agenda, just so everyone at home knows what the progress is and where we're at with the arena construction.
Yeah, so you, Mayor Todd, so the recreational complex is about 24% complete based on work that's been completed and invoices that have been submitted. So the bulk of the concrete's been poured other than on the arena surface. The cinder block walls are probably more than 50% complete now. So the last couple of weeks they've been putting the block wall in at the canteen area and the front area of the building. All of the plumbing and electrical rough-ins are done. The ice rink lines are installed, so that's the main kind of lines coming in to feed the ice rink lines. We did receive all of the large superstructure steel. That's been that came, I think, arrived in the last week or so, and we'll start putting that up hopefully this week or next. The storm sewer, that's all been installed on the parking lot, and we will see that paved this fall as well. So it'll start to look like a finished site once we hit kind of September, October, as far as the site goes outside the arena. The water main has been installed from Sophia to the most easterly entrance. And then they're going to work on the water main from the other side, the next Palmer's, and then continue that and the sanitary line that will feed to the arena from next Palmer's entrance through to and work their way westward. The other, so that's kind of those are the main things that have been happening over the last couple of months. The timeline has moved a little bit, just based on when that steel arrived, but we're still definitely in good shape for that fall of 2023.
Sounds good. Just thought we'd get that out there because I'm sure we're all getting questions all the time. And it's actually amazing how specific the questions have gotten. It seems like everyone in town is waiting for that steel to show up. I think I had that question a half dozen times. It's the steel there yet. So this is an excellent update for everyone that is watching, and hopefully the media will pick up on this and do a little progress report on it. Any other comments, questions from members of council? Councilor McConnell.
Just a question on what Nathan just mentioned, the storm sewer installed under the parking lot. I'm presuming that that's not hooked up to our town storm sewer system. That's just hooked up to the ditching that's in that area, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So there's a large ditch where you'll see the soil's been pulled up, and there's a large ditch that goes north. So all of the water, stormwater from the parking lot in the building will go north towards the Bradley's Creek and then make its way to the river.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. Thank you, Councilor McConnell. Once seeing no other questions, then I will return to the motion and call the question. All in favor? Motion is carried. Thanks, everyone. So we're on to item 9, committee reports, and under 9.1, we do have a report from our Planning Advisory Committee. That is PAC Report 8-2022, Site Plan Agreement. And recommendation reads that council approve the proposed site plan application SPC 2021-04, subject to the following conditions, unusual conditions, that the balance of any outstanding taxes, including penalties and interest and any local improvement charges, if applicable, shall be paid to the town. And 2, that the site plan agreement of the land shall be registered and submitted to the town. Could I ask for a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Young, seconded by Councillor McConnell. Mr. Armstrong, are you speaking to this matter?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And through you, Council, the site plan control agreement that you have in front of you this evening is for 965 Edward Street North. That's the current McEwen gas bar that's just across from the high school. What they will be doing is completely redeveloping the site, tearing down what's currently there, putting in a 320 square meter convenience store, as well as 123 square meter touchless car wash. They will have 3 gas pump islands. The card lock, if you'll remember, several months ago, we brought that site plan forward, and it will be moving to Churchill. And so there'll be no more card lock facility behind the building. And they'll also be installing electric vehicle chargers on the site as well. So it's a fairly significant increase in terms of the size of the convenience store. And my understanding is that they'll expand their M&M delivery or what they currently have in stock for that. So we're excited to see it. And this is one of their newer stores in the next evolution. So they look to redevelop sites every 10 to 15 years. And that really speaks to one of the comments that you had, Mr. Mayor, is that how will they change to reflect the increase in electric vehicles? And really, because they have that 10 to 15 year time horizon, that they will be looking to really move that into the next evolution when they electric vehicles will have to be pretty much mandatory as of 2035. So they see that they'll be able to continue to add vehicle charging. There's also some newer technology out there that allows for wireless charging, where you're just able to pull over or pull on top of a pad and it will charge and things like that. So they're well aware of that trend, and they feel that that will align fairly well with their next redevelopment. As you can see, when you get to the actual picture of the site itself, there'll be an entrance off of Edward, as well as 2 entrances to Irvine. We made special note of where the sign is and is going to be to make sure that it's not going to hamper the crosswalk that's currently at Edward and Irvine. And so making sure that it was back well from the corner and wouldn't be an additional impediment to that sight line. So we were able to cover that. And other than that, they've been great to work with, and I believe they're looking to start in mid to late August on their development moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Armstrong. I'll open it up for council for comments, but I'll turn to the 2 other members of the Planning Advisory Committee that were at that meeting, and Chair Jansman, Councillor Burton. Any comments from either of you on this to lead us into a discussion?
I'm very glad that Matthew Armstrong mentioned that there was quite a bit of discussion at the planning table regarding the pedestrian that is discussed around this table for later on in this agenda, and has been many times around this table. So to repeat what Matthew was saying, there was a lot of discussion. Signage is going to be placed accordingly, that kind of thing. There was discussion of the in and out, whether there would be any benefit to it be just one way, and then the second one on Irving to be the exit. But that was discussed with the WSP, and as it is now is the best scenario.
Councillor Burton, any other comments?
I just echo Councillor Jansman. That's exactly what happened, and it was a really good discussion, and there was a lot of questions, but discussion, it was a good discussion. So thanks.
Yeah, good discussion at the committee, but also real acceptance. This is a nice commercial expansion for Prescott overall. And we did thank the company for coming forward with this. Just shows you the amount of traffic we do have in town and how commercially viable, particularly that north end is, but I think the entire town. Councillor Young, you had a comment.
Thank you, Brent. I'm going to suggest that the one entrance off of Edward Street is a big improvement from the two entrances that they have currently on Edward Street. You wind up with their two entrances and Urban Drive right there. You've got three within 100 feet. You know, I think this is an improvement. There's just one little discrepancy, a point of misunderstanding. On page 39, it refers to 3 gas pump islands under a canopy. The next page, it refers to 3 gas pumps. The correct version is three islands with at least 6 gas pumps. Is that the way I read the drawing?
Mr. Armstrong, did you catch that?
Yep. So I believe it is a 1 gas pump with 1 on each side. So so instead of there being the 2 gas pumps where you would then be able to service 2 vehicles on each side, I believe it's just 1 vehicle per side. So it's a total of 6 handles, but 3 machines.
Okay, so three islands and 6 pumps at least.
That's what goes in the drawing.
Yeah, so you can service 6 cars at the same time.
Yeah.
Anything further, Ray?
No, I think I like the plan, the enlarged building. My understanding from talking to their staff is that their variety will be increased, what they're offering, and I think it's a bonus all the way around.
Yeah, good to see this sort of expansion, especially given the competition for this market in town overall.
Yeah.
It's nice to see there's a lot to go around. Any further comments, questions from members of council?
I just have,
Councilor Shankar, then Councilor.
and this may be able to answer by the members of the committee. It talks about 17 parking spots, yet 5 of them are for the car wash. But then it also talks about the car wash having 5 spaces for car wash. So I would assume that's, where they line up to go into the car wash. Do you know if there's a difference there?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So you are correct. There's 5 waiting spots for cars to go into the parking lot. So that you need to make sure that they're able to queue up along the north side of that property, and that there's 5 spaces that it's able to support, and which there is. So that was kind of very important because that's part of our bylaw, is that you have to have that queuing space so that it's not impeding the ability for people to move throughout the overall lot.
So are they really parking spaces though?
Not actually parking spaces, they're queuing spaces, but they measure the same size as the parking space.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Gregory. Thanks, Matthew. Councilor Ostrander, please.
Well, just a comment, even with the reduction of the one driveway in off of Edward Street, by the looks of things, it's going to be a considerably busier spot than it is now. And hopefully it can be handled well. Even I don't think Edward Street's going to get any slower or any less busier, but hopefully this works out better. It's certainly an improvement overall.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I think that one was mentioned in the pack, and I think both of you mentioned it as well here. Concerns about shaping the traffic, and another Ray mentioned it as well. I mean, it's a tricky area. You've got one, and we are going to have also the new build on the Wellington House property as well. That's going to add quite a bit to that whole area. So we've got to get it right with pedestrian access. Maybe we even get to the point where I hate this is cart before the horse, but maybe there's lights in that area. That corner has to be opened up as kind of a 3-way intersection, simply because there's so much, there will be so much traffic there. And Wellington that's a considerable number of new beds that'll be going in that facility. So that's also going to up things. But that's good. We've got the plan. We've got some ideas. So I think we're positioned well to adapt to that as that area gets even busier. So, any other comments from members of council? Seeing none, I will return to the motion then and call the question. All in favor? And item 10, Mayor, not a lot to talk about there this evening, but a good summer so far. It seems like forever ago now, but Canada Day, I want to thank our staff, everyone that helped out on council. I know a lot of people I saw manning the barbecues that day down at the arena. Really busy down at Promenade as well. It was a really nice day overall. We actually did have the Lieutenant Governor did stop in the area as well. It was in Augusta, but I was invited to that out at a truffle farm just north of town on Maple Avenue. So it was interesting to greet the Lieutenant Governor there along with the mayors of Augusta and Edwardsburg Cardinal. Actually, the invitation, and this is one of those things where I'm not going to say the A word with amalgamation, but it almost, because the address is the same, like Prescott stuck in all these addresses going into both townships that people think it's in Prescott. And that was actually the Lieutenant Governor thought that it was in, the office thought it was in Prescott. So they ran the invitation through me and found out pretty quickly, it's Maple Avenue. So I made sure that Augusta took that on from there, but really nice to see her. I'd met her a couple of times before, a number of years ago, and very nice woman, and just it's a really nice event. And I will say that whole truffle thing, I learned some stuff about truffles on Canada Day, and primarily, I always knew they're a delicacy, but boy, they're quite expensive. And it's interesting that on the same day there was a truffle event at Miracle Wolford as well. So it was sort of the Leeds Grenville Lieutenant Governor's truffle tour on Canada Day. But it is interesting that people are meeting, I guess, that demand from higher end gourmands, I think is the word, and people that want to spend $1,000, $2,000 on a delicacy. But it's really nice people too. I can't say enough for the hosts and everything back there as well. So it's a really nice event, nice way to celebrate Canada Day. Other than that, I just wanted to comment briefly. As usual, I've been spending summer evenings after work down at Kelly's Beach, along with, I'll say, hundreds of other people on a daily basis. I say this every year, the last few years, but the crowds down there are absolutely spectacular. And there are people coming from not just other areas in Leeds Grenville. I think people are actually making this a regular stop now during their travels in the 401, because you are seeing groups, families, and so forth that are not from the area. You'll actually hear a dozen different languages down there someday, which is it's just incredible that we've become that highly regarded a destination, or even a stop off while people are making their way on summer vacation. So anything we can do to continue to increase that signage, get them into the downtown and so forth. I know we're working on it, but boy, we've really landed ourselves a really nice way to bring people into downtown Prescott at that beach, and just incredible. And I want to thank staff for all the maintenance work and everything, because they've really been kept hopping. I was talking to Bob Dixon just yesterday on this, because it's almost impossible to keep up with some of the garbage down there right now. They're doing a heck of a job trying, but I just do want to ask people, anyone that does see this, and this is something maybe we can ask for signage down there at some point as well. Just ask people to take some of their garbage with them, because you are seeing people leave all sorts of food containers and so forth piled up alongside those garbage cans, because we do have those smaller pole garbage cans that don't accept a lot of larger receptacles. But just phenomenal. And I was down for a swim last night. I think I had 6-7 people come up to me and talk about just how gorgeous the entire downtown looks. So I want to make sure I pass that along to all our staff that's done so much great work on the maintenance, the flowers, which, I mean, Riverwalk's just spectacular right now. And that sun sail in the middle has really made a difference as well. Now that we've got, I think there's quite a number of those Adirondack chairs under there, and they're all over the place downtown now. So we've really got a special waterfront. We've always known that, but now it seems like Ontario's finally starting to get in on the secret, what we have to offer with that public waterfront space. So I did want to mention that, because it's shaping up, not so much today with the typhoon out there, but it's been a good summer so far, and the weather's been nice. And as it's warming up, we're getting more and more people down there. So fantastic to see. With that, I will move on to 11 inside boards, committees, and commissions, and start as always with Councilor Burton.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. I've been talking to Bruce and his wife Susan from the Spider Bike organization. They will be making a small having a small gathering at Riverwalk Park on August 6th. They'll be having lunch in our local restaurants and then moving over to the fort for big group photo and then parading down downtown streets. So after that, so looking forward to seeing them. He's hoping for at least 50 to 60 people to participate in this. So really, and Samantha is also helping as well. So that's going to be something great to see.
Great stuff.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jansen.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. I wanted to mention too how the promenade was, and I'm glad that it's a go ahead for August again. Special thanks to Dana and Justin and Elizabeth. Every time I went down there, Dana and Justin were there, so that was a big weekend. And I really I've heard positive feedback, and the social media seem to have a lot of positive feedback as well. Thanks to the staff for the Leo event, as well as the fireworks were very good despite the mosquitoes. Wow, they were crazy. Anyway, congratulations to our community award winners and nominees. The winners, of course, Prescott Memorials, Art Hitzman and Bill Countryman, and a special appreciation to Christine Sloan's South Grenville art students for their beautiful mural that was revealed on the same evening. The BIA did have a meeting last week, and once again, it was a great meeting, and with a lot of discussion and updates, staff updates about the current passport program that's running. That's very, very successful. So do take the time to learn about it and participate, and it's a fun thing to do, explore Prescott. Tracy also shared with the group from the Ontario BIA Association a toolkit, and that was sent to all the members, and from that discussion came staff direction or the idea of possibly providing our businesses with a resource list of what to do to get themselves involved in a helpful way when it has to do with homelessness, as that's a current growing issue across our nation, across everywhere, I guess. So that was really helpful. We also, the planning committee met again last week. Part of that agenda was another CIP application being approved. And from there, Tim, you might have read the article in the media about our CIP successful program, and staff is also going to follow that up with a media release of an update on our CIP successes. So, and that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jansen. Councillor McConnell.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. As you all know, I've been missing in action for the last 2 weeks. We've taken our usual summer holiday in Prince Edward Island. Fortunately, I didn't have any meetings that I missed, but there were a number of things that went on in town that I would have liked to have attended and unfortunately was not able to. One thing I will mention, though, is that on Facebook, while I was at the cottage, I saw some wonderful pictures of the flower garden down from Prescott. Goes up to Prince Edward Island. Nobody knows how far across the globe those are spread, and people are aware of just what a beautiful town that we have in the summer. I will mention the library. We just got back last night, so Buddy and I walked through Centennial Park this morning, and we read the scary story that the library has down there, which is just a great thing. I know we were going to do that, and I knew when we were going to do it, but it was still a surprise when I saw it. And apparently, according to Anne, it's been very well received. The dogs aren't reading that, though, according to Buddy. That's only one of them has been peed on. So I think the dogs aren't interested, but the kids and the people are. I also understand that the library is being frequented by the YMCA this summer and by Connect Youth. And Connect Youth in particular are enjoying it YMCA. They had a tremendous number of kids in all at once, which is going to take a little bit of fine tuning. But anyway, it's I think a work in progress, and the library staff has handled it very well, and are looking forward to working with the different groups. Shakespeare, as you know, is up and running. Unfortunately, their program for tonight was canceled because of heavy rain at 4 o'clock. But they're looking forward to continuing their series. Crowds have been good, I understand, and the show has been very well received, as Councillor Jansman mentioned to me, having enjoyed it tremendously.
For sure.
Thank you very much, Mayor Todd.
I would urge everyone out there to get down and see 12th Night, because it is the schedule this summer is 12th Night for roughly 2 weeks, and then into the 39 steps. So I think there's, is that not the schedule?
No,
I just looked at it today. I thought I actually had that right.
I could be wrong. I've been away from this for a while, but there is a one-night performance from the theater group in Ottawa. The Tempest, yes. I was under the impression it was between, but I could be wrong there.
Just
anyway, the big signs are down to Marina. There's and on the internet, if you would like to investigate.
Sure, that I don't want to say anything more about 12th Night possibly wrapping up its run this week, because maybe it does go longer, but get down there as soon as you can. It's a fantastic show, and really looking forward to 39 Steps and the other presentations towards the end of the summer. Two more special plays as well, in The Tempest, and
we have
the name of the other event escapes me right now.
The Red Priest, yeah.
So great summer down there. Please get down and enjoy some fantastic outdoor theater. Everything, Councilor McConnell, anything?
No, other than that, I heard on the internet by one of the performers this morning that Eddie and the Stingrays is playing on the 31st at the Marina.
Yeah. And fantastic crowds there again. So it's good to have the Sunday night concerts back. She mentioned that. Absolutely packed again last night for the show. So really good to see that with 2 years without any music in that amphitheater or Shakespeare plays of any sort. So feels like we're a little more back to normal. Thank you very much, Councilor McConnell. Councilor Ostrander.
Well, since you mentioned the Sunday night concerts, I'm one of the volunteers down there with the little white box, greeting people and thanking them for their donations. And before we have Eddie and the Stingrays on the 31st, next Sunday night is a local group, Happy Crap, and they replicate down east folk music and some jokes told and entertainment along the way. So I would think that they'll regale the crowd with their things. I also enjoyed the community awards a couple of weeks ago. It was really well done, well handled. We sort of covered a lot of topics in the different people that we honored, including the mural at the back of the Indigenous, and that was well done. And I've heard more comments probably about the fact that the pavilion is now the Candy Alexander Memorial Pavilion, and certainly the Legion crowd is well pleased with that. And I think that's going to be even better received as it's used more over the summer, and maybe even various other events in the other seasons as well. And I suppose I'd be remiss if I didn't update folks on our Ukrainian family. They've had the loan of a car for the summer, and that's really helped them out because their 10-year-old is in a boating camp in Brockville for 2 or 3 weeks, and it's going to help them get away with that. And there's another Ukrainian couple now in Prescott as well. And they live on the same street, right across the street from our current gang. So they've got to know each other and share stories from what they're hearing from back home, which is pleasant, I guess, but still it's some comfort to have the company of each other. So that's pretty well it for me.
Thanks, Mike. I should mention to everyone too, yeah, the community awards were fantastic. We did, no one was able to come from Joanne Crack's family that evening, and I did talk with one of the daughters afterwards. So we are looking at setting up another quick unveiling when we install it in the permanent location over towards Prescott Place. So make sure we invite everyone down for that when we can get a time. But we were going to discuss it with the family and make sure that we can attend. I think it was Amanda, the one daughter that we were speaking to, and BIA will be involved in that as well. So we don't think we have
August 10th.
Excellent. Okay. So we'll confirm that. We'll confirm that when it's not tentative, and we'll make sure to invite everyone out to that so we can do another little ceremony for Joanne down there, the permanent location of that plaque. So we'll look at August 10th, but if that changes, we'll make sure to let everyone know. Councilor Shankar.
Thank you. It has been a very busy month. And most of the events have already been spoken to, but I just want to give kudos to Dana on that. The Riverwalk promenade was really well received, and even whispers of why don't we do this every week? So be prepared, Dana. That would be the question coming out there. The Leo was well attended. We were all there. There's a good little group. What were they called? Oh. Last Resort or something like that, I think.
Westward.
Oh, I should.
Westward Oddities or something.
Yes.
They were playing Katarina's now too. They were playing last night.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
And they were fun to watch and listen, and it was well attended. There was a lot of hot dogs went out, and cupcakes, so it was fun. Shakespeare was fantastic. There was a bunch of us at the opening night. Can't wait to see some of the other productions. And the Sunday night concert series we talked about, so that's good. The one thing I was just wondering when we were talking earlier about signage, those signs on the highway.
The Todd's,
Thing
they're called TODS.
on the highway?
Yep.
Yeah, if we could get a sign for that, for the beach.
We can, Iroquois has one.
Yeah.
So
That's a good point. They can be challenging. That's the only issue. There can be a ridiculous hassle to get our big ones. I won't go into the story now, but that was like a 6-month process just to get approval. But that's a great idea. If we could, something take note of to.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I thought that would be something we could do, because I know that the Riverwalk walking path is on there now.
Yeah, we added that 2 years ago, or thereabouts. Yeah.
So that's great, and that looks fantastic with the 2 pop-up buildings that we have and the orange paint that's there now and the lights. It's really, everyone says it, we're lucky here, and it's starting to show, and people are stopping in. I was talking to a grandparent couple that had their grandkids, and they were down at the beach all day, and between the splash pad, the beach, and ice cream shops, they were loving it. So yeah, I think we keep going in the right direction.
Yeah, some good stuff. That's a great suggestion on the highway signage. You will find though, as soon as you look into that stuff, it can be an absolute bureaucratic nightmare to get those approved, especially the bigger ones. And is it this year, Dana, we're up, or is it next year?
We are actually, just in the process of designing the new, they need to be redesigned. They're quite weathered, as you probably noticed. So they are redesigned.
Yeah.
No, 5 years, yeah. But then we could also explore the directional signs if you wanted to do something specific for Centennial Park, Kelly's Beach.
And we did those originally too. The Todd signs are the big ones on the highway here, but we did a third one and put it on Highway 2 on our own property with Shakespeare, and that's getting pretty warm now too. It's been there for quite a while. Even the photos, I think, go back to 11 or 12, so it's going on a decade old. So that's something I'm hoping you're looking at that.
We're going to include that, in the request for council to cover the cost of that as well, replacing it all at the same time.
It's a nice spot on 2 there. You get a lot of traffic coming in. So, thanks very much. Excellent points. Councilor Young.
thank you, Brett. I did attend many of the events that have already been mentioned. I have been to Shakespeare twice now. I've enjoyed both performances. It's quite amazing that 6 actors can play the part of 11 or 12 people. it's, you have to pay attention. But it's an excellent evening, couple of hours of your life. It's very enjoyable. So that's all I have to report.
Good point on that for the cast, which was a necessity, I'm guessing, this year, but it must really test them, and they do an excellent job with it, especially to change course right in the middle of from one scene to the next. So, yeah, kudos to them for such an excellent job. Thanks, everyone. Oh, Councilor Burke.
Thank you. I just wanted to add on to the mural topic. We are adding on to that mural. So there's been lots of discussion. Well, it's really nice mural, but
What are you doing at the top?
what are you doing with the top? Yeah, or the side, whatever. So we are adding on to that. So that's in the production right now. I just wanted to put that out there for people to know. So.
Yeah, there have been lots of questions that night.
Yeah.
I asked about it when I first came on as well. And also we've had questions about the orange stretches that have been painted in both parks, and that's coming as well. There's a part 2 to that that's going to look really nice a little later. This fall, as the schools go back in September. Thanks for raising that. Excellent points. So moving on to item 12, we do have a number of staff reports this evening, starting off with 12.1. That staff report 72-2022 Riverwalk District decorative lighting recommendations. The council approved the purchase and installation of 14 decorative lighthouse themed pole mounted lights that will be installed throughout the Riverwalk District. Cost of the town not to exceed $9,000, and that's being done in partnership with the Prescott BIA. Could I have a mover, please? Moved by almost everybody, but I think I caught Councilor Jasmine and Councilor Shankar. So mover Councilor Jasmine, seconder Councilor Shankar. Dana, you have that report. Want to take us through the highlights?
Thank you for your worship to council. So we've been discussing with the BIA some new beautification, lighting improvements to the downtown, especially is in an effort to offsite some of the lighting that's going to be removed as part of the town's longer term street tree replacement program. And we've identified some pole mounted lights that would be very distinct to Prescott. So they are a lighthouse design. There is a rendering that's been included in the report for your review and consideration. The BIA has approved these at their recent meeting, and also approved matching the cost up to a total of $9,000. So the total estimated cost for these lights is about $18,000, $16,800. And that's about $1,200 per fixture for a total of 14 lights. So it would essentially give us enough to replace the snowflakes. Once they come down in February, we would transition right into the lighthouse pole mounted lights. They would stay up throughout the year until November, when they come down and get replaced by the snowflakes, and then vice versa. And just kind of carry on with that theme. And then that ensures that we've always got some sort of lighting in the downtown core. And we actually had the lighthouse designed to look as close as possible to the Rotary Lighthouse. So I do hope you see some resemblances there in that mock-up. I think they've done a really good job of coming up with something that looks quite similar in design. We're just debating on the actual color of the lighting right now. So once approved, what we're proposing is we would have the manufacturer create the frames and then test a few different lighting options, send those images to us, and then we would make the final lighting selection based on the mock-ups that we see. So I think it would be what we're looking for tonight is matching funding for council in the amount of $9,000. And as I mentioned, that would essentially cover the cost of 14 lights for the pedestrian lighting poles in the downtown. And that would cover a 4-block area from east all the way down to St. Lawrence. So we would have lighting throughout the Riverwalk District. That's the key, all of the main points that I wanted to make. So thank you.
Great. Thanks very much, Dana. Open it up for comments, questions from members of council. Councilor Jansen.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. Thank you, Dana, for the report. Because I'm the council rep on the BIA, I was at that table too when they approved their portion. And I just want to say how excited I am about this project. And it's a win-win situation because of our partnership with the BIA, that it's a great deal. So thank you.
Thank you. Other discussion? Councilor Burton, please.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. Dana, if I may, I don't see measurements for the lighthouse. Do we know what roughly the size of the going to be?
So they're 5 feet in height by 2 feet in width. So they're pretty
Okay.
much identical in size to the banners that are installed on the poles in the downtown, well, throughout the town. So the snowflake banners that we have in the winter, as well as the summer banners that are there right now, they're about 5 by 2 feet in size. So they'll have some nice visibility. They certainly won't disappear, but they'll leave lots of ample room so they can't be breached, vandalized, damaged by trucks going by. We've ensured that they'll have the height distance that they need to be protected.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments, questions? Councilor Shankar.
Thank you. This question is for Dana. Dana, it says they're going to go, there's 14 of them. They're going to go on the Riverwalk District. Is that King Street?
King Street.
Okay.
We would love to, eventually, I'd like to say this is a start, and we'd like to maybe expand on that into some of the other side streets, maybe something along Water Street, potentially even in Riverwalk Park at some point down the road.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Thanks, Corey. Other comments, questions? Councilor McConnell.
I think it's a great idea, and I think it's also important that we note that I'm just going to read the last sentence here. This allocation will be funded by the $60,000 allocation from the modernization funding that was put aside for economic development issues in the 2022 budget. This is money that we received from the provincial government, I believe, and we were allowed to spend as we saw fit. As far as economic development initiatives, and this should beautify the downtown, and I think be a good fit for what we're trying to do down there. And it's not costing the local taxpayers anything.
Absolutely, good point. Any other comments? The only thing I would add to this, and both Corey and Dan have already really touched on it. We've had this discussion at BIA a number of times, and it does. One of the things we're still missing in the downtown, it's not for want of trying, it is evolving, but that connectivity to connect the parks to King Street, back to the parks again and through the walk. And I always thought, we've had this discussion at BIA a number of times around the Lighthouse idea. I love this and I'm fully in favor of it, but I really would love to see go all in on this and have that lighting go right from one end of town to the other to bring people, because what we're drawing people are coming to town right now for the waterfront all year round. We've got the lighted walkway down here now for the Heritage Pathway. We've got the beach, but we do have that great big area in the middle. That's the core of King Street. And we're still not bringing destination people to that downtown as much as, we're trying and we're getting there. But I do think that we had I called it a Riverwalk walk, just something with some signage and some lighting that would take people around, something that's really guiding them. Because if you've got somebody that doesn't know the town, they may come direct to the one destination and they're gone again. So beach and out, or Fort Wellington and out. So I definitely support this, but I do think it needs to be expanded as soon as it's humanly possible, simply because we've got to catch it up on that and connect that waterfront and the beach and the parks with King Street to get some of our storefronts and get the commercial activity going in there. Because we've got so many people coming to town right now, but I don't think they're not shopping here like they could be. And I think we've got a real market that we're building, just a question of tweaks to market it and to be a little more successful and bring people downtown. But otherwise, no, this is great. We've been talking about this Lighthouse thing. Leanne, we talked about this 10 years ago at BIA, but remember the smaller lighthouses for the storefronts. So this is great that we're doing this with the lighted lighthouses this time. So, but I don't want to go away from that. This is a great start. Boy, I really think we need to expand it to get that linkage started. So any other comments for anyone on this item, Stephen? Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor? Motion is carried. Thanks, everyone. Dana, when were we looking at these? I know there's some design and some whatever. These won't be going up till next year now.
Yeah, so they would replace the snowflakes in March of 2023.
Okay, so getting the design, getting everything done now, so we're all ready to go next spring.
Yeah, getting production ahead of the Christmas season because they will be receiving their Christmas orders very soon. So we'd like to get them.
Okay, so And that's the other thing, like budget for next year. I'll just leave that suggestion. You could expand this and you could go right into next March with this if everyone's happy with the design and so on. And I think BIA would be supportive because that has come up on a number of occasions of linking everything and driving more customers into the downtown core. So we've got time and this is, so anyways, just leave off with that. Thanks again, Dana, for all that. Thanks, everyone. 12.2 staff report 73-2022 tri-council direction. Recommendation is the council receive staff report 73-2022 for information and endorse the creation of tri-council website for recreation and tourism assets, and that staff be directed to bring back recommendations on the feasibility of initiating a tri-municipal website and branding opportunities, and that staff be directed to bring back more information on healthcare and recruitment to the tri-council meeting of July 28, 2022. And that meeting, of course, will be hosted by Edwardsburg Cardinal. Can I ask for a mover, please? Moved by Councilor Ostrander, second by Councilor Burton. Lindsay, did you have anything you want to comment on this regarding the direction here?
Through you, Mayor Todd. Nothing. It's a summary report based on the discussion that took place at that tri-council meeting. As stated, the direction will come back to the following meeting held at Edwardsburg Cardinal on the 28th. And I did want to reference there is a typo in the financial implications. Just stating that the meeting is actually to be held on the 20th and not the 8th of July. So nobody missed that meeting.
Thank you very much. Comments, questions from members of council? Councilor Ostrander.
Well, just being at the meeting, it seemed to be the point that we wanted to key on for the next phase, I guess you could say, of our association of meetings and that. And it would be beneficial for us if we, in Prescott, if we could get maybe the first jump on that and get something put down. We could. The other municipalities seem to be online with it, but just I think we had the probably the best presentation initially of the rec features. Matthew did a good job of putting that together. The previous meeting, I believe, yeah, worked well.
Yeah, I think it was mentioned too in the meeting. We talked about finding one place for this. And I don't know, Steve Dolbaugh mentioned, I mean, you don't have, we're not really hosting anything from the other municipalities on the website. This actually gives people a kind of a one-stop shop with 3 municipalities that can, look at various items, and maybe this grows into something else as it moves forward. Corey, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was just going to say that we're at that meeting a lot, and I know it's only the second meeting, but I hope we can get more accomplished. I know we're trying, and it's new for Edwardsburg Cardinal to join us. I'm looking forward to the 28th because they're hosting it, and we'll see what we can move forward. But having said that, I'm in favor of this direction that we're going with. This is an motion.
Yes.
Recommendation.
Yeah.
Here. But yeah, so yeah, let's hope that everyone wants to work together, and it's just for the benefit of all our residents. If we can have one spot, I mean, I was looking up on Facebook, and there was a site or page called What's Up Rockville. It had 14,000 members. So if we even had a What's Up Prescott, South our South Grenville, whatever, and we could put all of our, put a live calendar on there. If you get 14,000 members on that, why not?
Oh yeah.
It might save the cost of the cost, not just the cost, but the work involved with running a website, right? Because it's easy to say, let's run a website for all 3 municipalities, but who's running it, right? Is it Matthew? Is it Lindsay? Is it Caitlin? Is that fair to us to come up with these ideas and then do all the work when they're not even playing along, let's just say, right? But anyway, it's just an idea, and it's something that I hope we can work together and for the benefit of everyone. Because I mean, we all look at Facebook, and you'll see every day people say, "Oh, what's there to do around town?" or "What's there to do?"
I heard about what happened on Saturday on Monday, which is
how come no one told me? It's like, do a little search. So Yeah, that's an idea, and I think there's other things that, you know, we're already working with a help, and let's keep it going.
Yeah, and the one thing I share, you did bring that up at the end of the last meeting, and I totally share, and you know, some of the frustration, because one of the things with this sort of process is you've got to have the meeting, have the discussions, then it goes back to the councils, then it goes back to the group and so on. So there's always that extra step, and there's really, unfortunately, there's no real good way to get around it. But if you actually have everyone working together on it, you know, sometimes, I mean, sometimes that time does fly by, and if we can approve things like this. And one of the keys to all of this, so if this does continue, and you mentioned, you know, an excellent point, who actually looks after these things. And you're getting to the point where maybe there has to be some sort of joint coordinator hired to look after some of the and if it's the three of us paying for it, it's a fairly minor expense. And if there is benefit.
It's time though. It's
Because if you end up having somebody that's always in the corner of their desk is kind of an added responsibility, you know, there can be issues with staying current on things. So just something, you know, growing pains with all this, but good to keep in mind for sure. Okay. Any other discussion on that tri-council direction tonight? Seeing none, then I will call the motion. All in favor? Motion's carried. Thanks, everyone. So 12.3 staff report 74-2022. This is in relation to Councillor McConnell brought that notice at our last meeting regarding some parking issues at the bottom of St. Lawrence Street, just south of King. Mr. Armstrong, you did provide the report on this. It is just set forward to us for information tonight, but please, if you want to lead us into this discussion and take us through the highlights of your report.
Certainly. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So as you just explained, on June 20th, Councillor McConnell did provide a notice of motion. And so what we wanted to do is just take a look at some of the options, whether they're low cost, medium cost, or high cost, of what could be done. So first and foremost, I think signage would really help to just tell people that beach parking is available on King Street, in particular between St. Lawrence and I believe it's West Street. I think there's 24 parking spaces on King Street that certainly I think people drive down St. Lawrence Street expecting that there to be a parking lot down there somewhere, and they're perhaps surprised when there isn't. The other part of the signage is actually when they make the corner, and I believe it becomes Water Street at the base of St. Lawrence, is that we could provide additional parking or additional signage there to just say, this is kind of private lanes, private driveways, do not proceed, there is no exit, there is no other parking lot. And right past the pathway, we could put just speed bumps so that it just would naturally force people to say, oh, I don't want to go over the speed bump, I want to back up and then turn around and find a parking space. So that way it alleviates people driving into private driveways and along that. And it's fairly narrow in that area. So that's why we could add some things there. We did take a quick look to see by adding parking at the base of St. Lawrence Street. I feel that there's a little bit more work that we need to do before we just jump into that one and move forward. Our rust estimate was between $35,000 and $50,000 because we would have to build a retaining wall because there's quite a bit of a slope when it gets down there. And so there's some things that we would have to do in order to support kind of bringing that up and then building a retaining wall and that sort of thing. So more than happy to add it to the 2023 list for potential projects and see how that goes. But we are looking at kind of all the options and being able to say what are low cost options, what are things that we can do now, and what are things that we do need to spend a little bit more time planning. And so those were kind of how we categorize them. In terms of the signage on King Street, and again, we would put it both ways so that if you're coming from the west or from the east, that you would be able to see it. And then that additional signage at the bottom and the speed bump can all be absorbed as part of this year's operational budget. It's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $1,000 or $2,000. So not too much of a concern there, but obviously the larger adding parking would be a little bit more substantial and outside something that the operational budget can support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matthew. I'll go to Councillor McConnell for first comments on this, as of course he raised this issue at our last meeting. Lee?
Thank you, Mayor Todd. As I mentioned, I was approached several times by several people that live on Water Street West, I will call it, in regards to the parking and turning around and the pylons that they got to keep in their driveways to keep people from pulling in and pulling out. As Matthew mentioned, it's very narrow. Before we put curbs in on the south side, we used to give people parking on half on the driveway, half on the street, half on the grass, and that made it very difficult for people to get in and out of their driveways. We don't have that happening anymore. I still feel the solution here, though, is what I suggested when I first brought this up, and that is to remove the two bottom parking spots, one on the east side, one on the west side, and that will give people a chance and space to turn around at the foot of that street without pulling into a driveway. Because once you've made the commitment to turn, and I agree that the signage on King Street is important, but once they've made that turn to go down, there's only one way to get out. Nobody is going to back out onto King Street. That's just not going to happen. So if they don't make the turn and turn in the driveways on Water, then they're going to turn in the driveways on the south end of St. Lawrence Street. They're either going to turn at the bed and breakfast, or they're going to turn into the parking spaces on Catarinas, golly, I forgot the name of the other lady. I should know it.
From the Maryland, from the.
No, it'll hit me 10 minutes from now. Anyway, so I think integral to fixing this problem is to give people a place to turn around so they don't have to go into anybody's driveway. Because if we just move the problem from Water Street out of St. Lawrence, we know what's going to happen, and we're going to get complaints from the people on St. Lawrence, and it deservedly so. If we take out those two spots, then that will give an area where there is room to turn around. As far as removing the wall on the south side of St. Lawrence Street, that was not part of my suggestion. And Brett, I know this was your idea. It's not something I would ever swallow. That stone wall or cement wall provides a barrier between the street and the beach. And if we just move that south, some parking spots, we reduce the size of the beach, we reduce the play area. And I don't really think that's reducing the size of our beach area is what we should be doing. So signage, great. Speed bump, I think it's an excellent idea. A temporary speed bump. I would still provide the large dead end or whatever sign at the foot of the street to keep people from coming down there. But something needs to be done. And I think it needs to be done now before summer is over. Because after the middle of September, the problem largely goes away until next summer again, next spring again. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councilor McConnell. So in turn, go ahead.
This is wardrobe.
Oh, yeah, of course.
She used to be the librarian and your mother-in-law.
Yeah. Sorry, I thought you were across the street. So okay, we can probably, in terms of whatever it's done for the parking at the bottom, that's something that could be looked at as a 2023 a budget issue. I am in favor of that, to move it, but I mean that we don't have to discuss that tonight. That's a longer term thing for a future date. So if everyone's okay, we can set that aside. But I do thank Matthew for bringing that forward, mentioning, because I do think we need to do something to that area, whether it's parking or not. The current way out simply doesn't work for parking or for people, because it's a scrub brush of just, it's not used for anything. That section right there, the odd person sits there, but most do not. Anyhow, in terms of what we are looking at tonight, because Councilor McConnell is correct, and if anything's going to be done, it should be done now, simply because TikTok. So what we are looking at is the really three items here: the signage, the speed bump just around the corner, and the possibility of removing the parking spaces. So I think I'm just trying to read the room from the last time around. We discussed the signage and the speed bump briefly, and I think there seemed to be general consensus on that. Am I reading the table correctly there? So I'm just trying to reconstruct a motion here that we can move forward on it. The parking was more of an issue. So comments all the way around, but I think we've got an agreement on two of the three. The parking seemed to be kind of the sticking point. Gore, you to comment?
Guys, I just wanted did you say that the speed bump is temporary?
Matthew, was that temporary or permanent?
So the idea is that the speed bump would only be there for spring, summer, and fall, and then it would be removed during the winter. So that way it doesn't hamper any snow removal, that sort of thing. So it's exactly the same thing that we do at the fire hall. There's a speed bump there for about 9 months of the year, and then it's removed for the other 3 to 4 months.
Apologies, that actually is on the bottom of page 51 there. I didn't catch that either. So
I missed it too. And then sorry, and I know you don't want to discuss it now, but if removing that barrier or putting it further south, how many parking spots are we looking at gaining?
hard to say. I've kind of paced it off myself, and I think you could add anywhere from 5 to 8, depending on how you do it. I think you'd get 4 there minimum. It's not a lot, but it's also, you gotta have a good drop-off zone there as well, because a lot of the issues that Lee is talking about comes from people dropping their kids off at the pool, because they go around and drop off right in there and then back around, or drop their kids off to work there as well. And Corey, I know you're familiar with that one. So that's, I think it could solve some potential issues, but it's a much bigger issue, and I think we need money. We need some estimates on the dollars there.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Other comments? Councilor Jansen.
Just if I could, through you, Councilor McConnell, I went down with my car. Mind you, I drive a very small car, but I could still turn around with those existing parking spots that you're proposing to delete. But you're saying, you're probably not arguing that that's the case, but you're saying it's too inconvenient for people to do so?
It's easier for somebody to pull around the corner into a driveway than it is to make the turn where you did. And yeah, you do have a small vehicle. Somebody with a van or an SUV, a reasonable size one, is not going to be able to make an easy turn down there with those 2 parking spots. And my suggestion is to simply get rid of them. This just occurred to me, when we designed Riverwalk Park, we put that turnaround spot in right where it abuts the sidewalk coming out of the marina, the northeast corner, if you recall. That was a larger turnaround, if I remember correctly, but we shrunk it so that people could come there, back up and turn around and drop people at the amphitheater. And you can't do that at the foot of St. Lawrence Street. And I agree with you. There are a lot of people that go down there and drop kids off for the pool. If they get used to it, they could drop kids off on the other side just as easily, and the kids can walk across the park. But if those 2 spots were gone, then that area would be probably, I think, a little bit larger than the turnaround drop off that we had at Riverwalk Park. And I think it would accomplish the same thing. So I am still in favor of eliminating those 2 spots. Thank you.
So would you want then maybe that the addition to that is to make it like with lines and signage, like a drop off?
Turnaround. If that was possible to do, yeah. And that anything to encourage people that's it. You don't go any farther, turn around. I'd be in favor of that, and I'm sure the people that live on Water Street would be in favor of that. Anything that keeps them off of Water Street.
To really do that, you're looking at, I don't know how you would do that without doing something with that wall. I mean, you, I guess you could, but I just think the wall is a pretty hard barrier there for that sort of roundabout turn. But anything further,
Thank you.
Councilor Burton, please.
Thank you. I think with appropriate signage and just social media, posts on social media, what our intentions are for that area. You know, removing the wall, I think that's a big concern. If you are putting parking spaces right in there, then you have to be concerned about the environmental aspect of things. If oil is going to leak from somebody's vehicle, it's going to be onto the sand and go to the water. And so I'm definitely not in favor of that. I think with the just appropriate signage, we put a blast out in social media. This is what we're trying to do and eliminate some, unfortunately, people going into other people's, turning around in driveways. So I think if we just really promote that with the appropriate signage and the speed bump, I think will be good.
Thank you. Other comments? So someone want to present a motion to that effect? I'm sorry, Councilor. I mean, if anyone wants to propose something with the removal of the parking spaces, but I just don't think the parking space removal has a lot of takers. And I will say myself, did you have suggested?
Not a suggested motion, I just through you. So Councillor McConnell's original motion they presented is coming up under 13.1. So I wasn't sure if now after this discussion, when it comes up, then we can amend the motion, or I just didn't want to pass a motion that then when Councillor McConnell's motion comes up completely.
Excellent point. I missed that myself when I reviewed the agenda earlier. So we can deal with it here, and then I mean, we can do it either way, but I mean, we're having the discussion now. That's quite a bit later this evening. No, it's not. I'm incredibly confused if anyone hasn't noticed yet. But yeah, I do see that is coming up next. So we could just move it there, but you know, that recommendation is just essentially endorsing the staff report with that specific. So we're going to want to tweak that anyways. But thanks for bringing that up, because I did miss that. So do you want to everyone want to take care of that now and then not deal with that item under 13.1? Because it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other, but we're having a discussion now. So if everyone's okay, I just would suggest that I think we're agreed on the signage and the speed bump. The one comment I would have on the signage, if we're going to do the signage down there, I've asked for this on a few occasions, and I'll ask again. When you see in the photo here, right, with that sign there in the bottom, when we do all the signage, can we have a larger sign made up at the same time? And this, I think it's desperately needed. Right in this area, something large. It can be a Town of Prescott logo, welcome to the park, but have a couple bullet points on there. No dogs on the beach, no smoking in the park. Something about, you know, please try and look at what you bring to the park, please take with you when you go. Just something basic like that as reminders, because we don't have very prominent signage there on the dogs. We don't have very prominent signage down there on the smoking, and what we do have, people rip off and destroy on a regular basis as well. So if I could just mention that, I do not have to specify that in the motion, but I did want to add that because we do need something there, I think, welcoming people as well. And I think that would tie in nicely with our overall objectives here to try to make it a nicer place for everyone, particularly the residents, but also you know, the residents, as Lee's talking about, around that corner, but also everybody that uses the park, because they're, I've seen the dog issue's been a big one again this year. I think Councillor Jansman and I were talking about that the other day, and I did see bylaw there on the weekend reminding a couple of people that had their dogs down in the water during the middle of the day that you can't do that. So signage isn't a cure-all for everything, but it's not a bad thing to add that. So that would be my only comment there on how to proceed. So a motion regarding the installation of the signage as discussed, and the speed bump and local traffic only sign right around that corner. Did anyone want to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Councillor Burton, thank you very much. Seconder, Councillor Shankar. You've got the wording on that. Thank you. Any further discussion?
Just curious, what's going to be the favorite method of dealing with this? Ticket or tow? Is that what we're saying, or?
There've been ticketing actually happening on a pretty constant basis lately. I do know that bylaw's been down there and ticketing people for parking in the wrong way on this street, parking along this end, because people will just sometimes leave their vehicles right along that corner. I've
Sit at
seen.
an angle sometimes.
Yeah, and it's nice to see bylaw been both walking through and also driving through and ticketing,
Okay.
because it is so busy and people just, somebody left there was a car left right in the corner of King Street the other day for hours. Dangerous, because when you're trying to come back out, you've got no visibility whatsoever, but
And
that person was
what is the
ticketed.
fine? Do we know?
I'm not sure if we have anyone that,
Okay,
I'm guessing around the standard $25-30. I wouldn't think it'd be more than that, but I don't know. I really shouldn't even hazard a guess.
If I may.
Yeah.
Along that same lines, if we have somebody that's parked right on the corner, regardless of whether it's St. Lawrence Street or the beach, George Street or wherever, why would we issue them a ticket? Why wouldn't we just have them towed? It is a danger. The fact that they've got a ticket might give them pause to say, oh, what the hell, park here for another 2 hours. I've already got the ticket. Haul them out of there.
And I'm not saying we haven't towed anyone. I don't know if we have. I just know I've been down there that super hot weekend. I was down for a couple hours Saturday evening. And then the last thing, I saw the tickets and I did see tickets being, well, I don't think the person was ticketed with the dog issue, but I did notice that there was another one as well. So I don't know. That'd be a question for Mr. Merriman if we've actually looked at towing anyone. But I know I did talk to Sean about that a few weeks ago, because we do have parking issues down there. That's a good problem to have, but I did ask Sean if they could just kind of keep an eye on it, because people were parking in some weird spots, exactly to what you're saying, blocking visibility. And it's good to see that they are on that. So but I don't know if there have been tows or not. I don't know the stats or anything. I just don't see the tickets.
If I may, two of the worst spots, as far as I'm concerned, is on the north side of King Street, directly west of Edward, in front of the TD Bank, with somebody who's just running in, and exactly the same thing in front of the Royal Bank. Because you come around the corner and from Edward onto King, and bang, there's somebody right there, almost where you turn, and you can't see at George when there's somebody parked there. And God help us if it's one of those big pickup trucks, you can't see anything anyway.
Well, that one's up next, and I'm sure we're going to bash that around for a little while. So anyhow, we're moving forward on the two items and a vote on that, but not the parking removals that were requested by Councilor McConnell. So I've got direction and wording and motion, mover and seconder. So any final comments, and then I'll call for a vote. Favor. Approved. And for the residents down there or media, whoever's looking at this, let's keep a dialogue going. Let us know when there are issues and so forth. We're not saying no to anything here. Well, we're saying no to the parking issues, but we're trying to work with everyone down there and make sure we can improve the issue without potentially causing other problematic issues by removing parking spaces and so on. It's a balancing act down there, because I think we all agree. And it's a good problem to have. We need to add parking somewhere down there, whether it's on the other side. We talked about last year, the year before, down by where that little cinder block building is that we haven't really utilized for years, over by the tennis courts. I don't think we use that for anything. Does anyone know? I don't think it's even storage really anymore. And then it's been neglected for a long time. We probably could knock that down and put 10 spots in there. But anyhow, that is something that's going to have to be addressed. This isn't the final word in the parking down there and the overall situation, but I hope this will move us forward a little bit. Okay, so moving along, find where I am. So we are at 12.4. Staff report 75-2022, pedestrian crossings evaluation and options. Recommendations that council directs staff to proceed with the following intersection recommendations. And there are 7 of them. One is to remove the excess signage and correct the pavement markings at Edward and Victor at an estimated cost of $1,500. 2, to obtain a quote for the installation of a mid-block pedestrian signal at Edward Street and Irvin Street. 3, to remove the excess signage and correct the pavement markings at Edward Street and Park Street at an estimated cost of $1,500. 4, to install directional signage and make the repair to the signal head at Edward Street and King Street at an estimated total of $6,500. And 5, to obtain a quote for the installation of a PXO type B pedestrian crosswalk at King and Center. 6, to obtain a quote for the installation of a PXO type B pedestrian crosswalk at King and George Streets. 7, to install signage, correct the pavement parking, extend the traffic arm, and replace the flashing lights with RRFBs at an estimated cost of $15,500. Councilor Young?
Is that at $6?
That was a question,
It is.
Nathan or for Matt. It is correct.
Yeah, the last one, $6, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
We should add that to the report.
So add that to the motion. Okay, yeah, that does clarify things a little bit. I will note, I'll ask for mover and seconder on this, but 5 and 6 are the ones I'm having trouble with, and I'm wondering, I may ask to have those split off a little later, because to me, we're talking in some ways, they're kind of separate issues and well related, but anyways, I'll leave it for now, and maybe it'll go ahead as is, or maybe not. But do I have a mover on that item? Councilor Young, seconder. Councilor Burton. So Nathan, do you want to take the lead on that, or is Matt?
Yeah, we'll share the report, but I'll start.
Sure, please.
Through you, Mayor Todd. So this is the continuation of the work that we're doing on the pedestrian crossing evaluations and then how we can improve this thing today. We've had a couple of reports from the council. One of the things that we did a discussion with the traffic engineers, would have been, I guess, the week kind of following the council meeting. And they typically, one of the things that they always recommend is the traffic count, so that you really can quantify what traffic that we have there and how many pedestrians are crossing. That we did have. And one of the things that they did mention even in their initial analysis was that the sight lines were that good at all at Center and George. So that's something that we took, it's a low cost and easy thing to do. So we did take out some parking spaces on Center and King on July 11th. And so far, I haven't seen or heard much feedback, positive or negative, but I'm sure people feel much more confident and comfortable when they do approach that intersection, coming from Center Street from either direction. And then the other intersection is King and George, that we can improve the sightlines there by the end of this month as well. And we kind of wanted to do one first and then make sure that there wasn't too many issues either way, and then we would go at the next intersection. So following that meeting, we did get the traffic counts done. The consultant was able to take care of that. Expedient matters. They know that they're trying to move this forward quickly. So they did look at an 8-hour traffic pattern, which was at the 3 intersections that council suggested were the ones that were kind of the main priority, which would have been Irvine and Edward, and then King and Center, King and George. So again, they would have done the counts and they produced a memo as well that has all the count numbers. And one of the things that they also did with that is we got them to look at, what warrants certain styles of lighting at these intersections. So that's another thing that we'll go through in the report. So if we get to, so Edward and Victor, what we're recommending is that just kind of reducing some of the clutter that's there. I think that's one of the things that they noted is that there's a mix of treatments, and I think if we remove some things, it will make it actually a clear pedestrian crossing. Really there was very little cost to improve that intersection, and that would be removing some of the signage that it's not appropriate for that style of crossing, and then removing some of the even the flashing lights at Prescott Center Drive. So typically the flashing lights for the school crossing will be there for to reduce you from 50 to 40 kilometers an hour. But since there's a crossing there already, and since you're already 40 kilometers an hour, it is a very redundant thing for drivers to see. And we would also remove the X's in the pavement. That's another thing that you would see at a different style of crossing. So it does confuse drivers, I think, from if you have a as they approach that crossing. So the total cost there would be $1,500. And then there's other things that we can do to improve it, which would be for accessibility, which would be the push buttons with the audible and vibro tactile indicators, and then also the tactile plates in the sidewalk. So that's a greater cost for those things. So it'll be something we look forward to in future years. And then also one of the poles could be repositioned as well. And then adding a stop bar. So kind of changing the pavement markings is the main thing there.
So Nathan, if I could, and let's just go through this one item at a time. So we're keeping this. Otherwise, we're getting into a huge overall discussion. So when you mentioned the audible indicators, that's that chirping noise that hits once. So we wouldn't be installing that now.
Correct.
Okay. That's a little disappointing, simply because I do know that it does seem to be kind of the new standard in terms of street lights. I see Brockville has them at north end, and so we don't have any idea of what a cost for that would be now.
We did reach out to the electrical contractor that we frequently use for streetlights, and they got us a little bit of costing on a few things, but they've been extremely busy quoting a bunch of stuff. And we will continue to get the cost from them, but we didn't have it in hand last week.
Okay, because I mean, Councilor McConnell did bring it up, and I've had it requested from a couple of residents as well, largely for the downtown core, but I think if we do it, I mean, a standard, and it's a good accessibility standard for the entire municipality anyway, so you know, it'd be nice to get an update on that, to try to add that. So I don't know if you can get that for our next meeting or at some point, so the work could potentially be added to it. I'm not saying pause any of this, but I do think that's something we shouldn't leave behind, because it is something that has been requested, and I think will be a benefit to people with sight difficulties in town. So, Councilor McConnell.
Yeah, you made the point I was going to make. On page 60, there's a chart of what is proposed here. And the audible chirping things that you mentioned, it says future year. Well, I don't find that acceptable, because we've had a complaint right now where somebody can't see the light. If that person happens to get hit, and we've already been advised that they can't see the light, I would think that we would be highly liable. A future year, no. Find out what the thing is going to cost, find out as soon as possible, and let us decide on it. So suggestion for the next meeting, I think, is well worth staff following. Thank you.
Okay, if we tackle that one right now, then, because we could potentially add that as an overall addition to the motion, to request staff to come back. And Lee, do you have another comment?
I do. You referenced earlier the addition or the new beds at the seniors home in the north end of Prescott, which is essentially across from the urban drive intersection. I think that in a future year would be a good idea, since that home isn't being built right today. But it seems to me that is a good spot for one of those as well.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And I should say, I'm not going to say I've got the information on when they're building, but we did get an invite to Matthew and I just to meet with the developer not long ago, who's putting that up just as a meet and greet sort of thing at the AMO conference in a few weeks. So I'm not sure if anyone has. Matthew, do you have an update? Sorry, I keep forgetting that you're here because you're not on screen. You're probably enjoying that though. But any update on that, when that's actually proceeding?
I believe they're still waiting on their approval from Ministry of Health for their final design. So that could take anywhere from 3 to 6 months. But I do understand that they want to get shovel in the ground as soon as possible. So originally they were hoping for late in this year, but it's probably looking more like early in next year.
Okay, yeah, it's good to know though that it is coming sooner rather than later now after. Well, this is, I think I first got the call on this in 2011 or so. It's been actually in the works for a very long time. And now the money's been cleared up to the one ministry there. year and a half ago or so now. So at any rate, it is moving. So an excellent point from Councillor McConnell on that and the importance of these audible alerts at the intersections in that area with the bigger Wellington House coming very soon. So I'll raise that as just with everyone. Is everyone in agreement on that? Because we could add that to the overall motion when we finally get around to discussing that, to request staff get the numbers on the audible installations. Everyone okay with that? And seeing some nods, so we can look at adding that as a request, and hopefully the contractor will be able to get us something on that sooner rather than later. So I think I agree with Lee, and I think everyone around the table, it is an important aspect. So in terms of everything else there on Edward and Victor, any other comments from council on that one? Councillor Jasmine?
Through you, Mayor Todd, if I could just get clarification, it's for future years anyway, but what equipment lifestyle means. On your last point, replace Westport life cycle. Yeah. What did I say?
Lifestyle.
Sorry. No wonder you look so confused.
I think what they're referring to there is that if the pole's got 5 more years left, maybe do it in 5 years.
I see.
Like
Okay.
life cycle of the equipment, the hardware itself.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jasmine. Anyone else on the intersection of Edward and Victor? Okay, so I think we're good on that one. Item 2.
Okay, so I think Matthew, we're going to switch back and forth. So Matthew will will go through the details on Edward.
Matt, please.
So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So as mentioned, the traffic count was completed. There was approximately 7,400 vehicles that passed on that day. That's two-way direction, so not just in one direction. There were 9 cyclists, 124 pedestrian crossings. Now, the one point that we want to make with this one in particular, it was on the final day of school, and we would unlikely be getting the secondary school students in particular making that crossing. And also when we're talking about crossings, we're talking about all 4 corners. And so even though the one corner is simply a sidewalk, that's the side that's on Edward, that they're not actually crossing, they're just continuing on the sidewalk. So I just wanted to make that point when I'm kind of walking through this. So as I mentioned there, the east leg, which is the sidewalk on Edward, 76 pedestrians crossed that portion of the intersection. 27 used the south leg, or were actually in the marked crosswalk. 17 used the west leg, so that's crossing Irvine by the McEwen and the Burger King. And finally, 4 pedestrians crossed on the north side, which is not the marked crosswalk. So that's what it looks like from a cycling and pedestrian usage. So when they took a look at what that would mean, first of all, 7,400 vehicles, there's a cutoff at 7,500 for how you would deal with particular types of crosswalks and what that would mean for the equipment that you use. And so 7,400 vehicles is very close, obviously, to that 7,500 marking, as well as there wasn't a lot of pedestrian usage, and so it wouldn't normally suggest that you would need one. However, in the past, we have noted that there is quite a bit of usage in the school time. So if you were to go ahead and take a look, if you're just looking at the 7,400 vehicles, then you would use a Type A, which we currently don't have a Type A in town, but it's similar to the flashing lights on the side, but then there's also flashing lights on top and a large pedestrian X that would run over the roadway. But if you were to move to a mid-block, and that's where you have that 7,500 vehicles, then it would be very similar to a mid-block is actually what is at Victor and Edward. So that's really where the recommendation came from, is that if we're going to look at changing it out, do we really want to move to a Type A and then discover that with additional traffic that it really should have been a mid-block and should have been that anyways? So that's why the recommendation says go back, take a look, get pricing on a mid-block, intersect or that type of crossover. And then it would be consistent between Edward and Irvine and Edward and Victor in terms of how those two intersections would look and feel for the users. So that's another reason why you'd want to try and keep with that consistency at there. So that's really what that intersection is about, and the recommendation for the crosswalk. Thank you.
Thanks, Matthew. Before I open up the questions, I'm assuming if we're looking at a quote for something like this, this will involve some fairly significant dollars.
That would be my guess, yes. We're likely going to have to put in at least one pole, if not two. Probably with mid-block type installations, you're looking at putting electrical to them as opposed to solar. So, we're probably talking some more significant dollars than just some of the other treatments that are possible there.
Sure. So this would be something we would potentially recommend tonight, and the numbers will come back for the potentially for the 2023 budget discussions.
We bring them back for the August discussion to see, is there some way that we can find money for them, or is this simply a 2023 discussion? But we would absolutely bring the quote back for the next meeting on August 22nd.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to see if this was one that we'd be looking at even at that quickly. I wondered if this was something that was just going to be kind of put in the queue. So that's good information. So open up for discussion. Any comments, questions on Edward and Irvine? Councilor Burton.
Thank you. I think this is one of the major intersections that we should be concentrating on with the school coming back in September. So it'd be nice to see some figures and see what we can do to get that implemented before the school goes back into session. So thank you.
It's always been problematic, particularly from that visibility standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Other comments, questions? Councilor McConnell.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. I spent Saturday night in Fredericton, New Brunswick, and coming out, we went down a street that had, I think I counted 5 blocks. Each cross street had a pedestrian cross. And when you look down the street, they all had the same light, one after another after. It was very easy to tell what they were. There was no mistake in it. It was a crosswalk, and it was a person walking, a square of a person walking with a light. As it happened, nobody was crossing the 5 blocks, so I didn't see how but there was a light on either side, and it was very easy to tell what they were because they were all the same. And my point is, we've got from Churchill Road and Edward, which we haven't discussed at all, which wasn't included in this, to the 401 is not a long stretch. And we're looking at 3 sets of lights in that period. One of them a full stoplight on the corner of Churchill and Edward, and the other 2 crosswalk lights. And whatever we do, and even if it takes us a year or 2 to get there, I think we should have uniformity in those lights, the lights themselves especially, so there's no confusion. Thank you.
Yeah, excellent point. It ties into exactly what Councilor Burton mentioned, because right now we've got a situation where one is so different from the other. And, it's no criticism of anyone that planned it and whatever else, because it did seem to be functional and be workable at the time. But it's an easy one to miss, especially coming off the other one that is so obvious. And there's also a crossing guard. I'm not suggesting adding another crossing guard, but you've got a crossing guard at the high school as well. So it's more of a, hey, everybody's just more and more alert there. Thank you, Councilor Shank.
I do have a question for Matthew. Matthew, we have 7,400 vehicles in that 8-hour survey. And then the next threshold is 7,500 to put a PXO crossing, a type A, I think. What's the next level? Is there another one?
So the 7,400 would suggest a type A. 7,500 is the final level. And that's when you get to what is basically at Edward and Victor. And so there, above that, there is no higher level than the one that's at Edward and Victor.
Okay, I just want to make sure if we're putting in a 7,500 one, that there isn't an 8,000 or an 8,500.
76.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. Thank you. But I'm fine with getting a quote to see how much that will cost.
Okay, so are we good on that one then? Sounds like it. So please on to item 3, Edward.
So the next one is 3 Mayor Todd's Edward and King. So Edward and King, it is a busy intersection, and it's going to require a full, much more in-depth traffic review by a traffic engineer.
Before we move on, is that Edward and King or Edward and Park?
Park.
Yeah, we missed one.
Sorry, did I skip that one?
Oh, sorry, I was.
Yeah, it's supposed to be Edward and Park. Okay, let me go back to that one. You're right. Yeah, so I had Edward at Park. Again, so similar to Edward at Victor. To improve that one is just sort of removing some of the markings on the pavement and then adding things onto the pavement that aren't there. And removing a few signs, and then that's about $1,500 repair for change in markings, and then similar again to Victor, some items that will be done in a future year, which we'll look into for the audible environmental tactile indicators and the tactile plates. Yeah, so it's a very similar setup where we can easily move a few things forward quickly.
Thank you, Nathan. Open it up for comments, questions on Edward at Park. Everyone good with the recommendations there? That's probably one of the easier ones. So we'll move forward. So Edward and Park, accepting those recommendations. Of course, there is the addition of the audible at the end, but that'll be a lump addition to everything. So item 4, directional signage and make the repair of the signal head in Edward and King. Estimated cost $6,500. Matthew, I'm assuming you have this one.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So this one, as Nathan was mentioning, requires a much more in-depth study. It does not currently meet MTO standards. And in particular, seems to be a pole missing on the southwest corner, which I think used to be there in the early 2000s, but then was subsequently removed. So it's going to require a large investment to redesign this particular intersection, and we would like to take the time, have a study and a redesign completely part of the 2023 projects. At the very least, the redesign of it, and that way we can make further recommendations as to how we can tackle it. So right now, from a traffic standpoint, it works fairly well. It does not work well from a pedestrian standpoint, and there needs to be some significant investment made into it. But there's nothing that we can really do in the short term to be able to fix them because these are large investment items and does need a significant redesign.
Thanks very much, Matthew. Just in terms of what's being looked at here for the redesign, would that preclude us adding that audible directional chirp to this intersection?
I believe it may, simply because they're out of the 4 corners. I think there's only one corner that actually has the walk sign. And so, and I don't believe the rest of the corners even have a button. So that's why this intersection in particular really does need a full rethink and a significant investment, because all of those poles, they're either missing the don't walk indicator, they don't have buttons, they don't really meet any particular current standard, and really does need a significant amount of rework.
Okay, yeah, I just did notice that's not in your chart on this one, so I did want to raise that. I still think if there's any way to add something, maybe it's just flat out impossible, but we'll just keep that, and when we add that to the recommendations later. But good clarification on that, if that's absolutely impossible given the extent of the changes that need to be made there. So open that up for discussion for members of council. Comments, questions on King and King and Edward. Gordy.
Yeah, is it worth putting 6,500 into this if we've got to do a whole redesign?
Absolutely. In terms of, it clarifies where people are supposed to be when they're kind of going through or making a turn. And so it's important from that perspective, as well as there is a damaged signal head, and whether we move forward with any changes or not, we absolutely need that to be repaired. So those are kind of the two minimum things that we feel that does improve it, and obviously from a functionality perspective that it needs to be working and working correctly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Shankar. Other comments, questions? Mike?
Well, I think it's, I would agree with the cost and the considerable upgrade that it needs, particularly from a legal standpoint. A pedestrian gets hit, somebody gets hit turning, whatever. It's definitely the busiest corner we have. So yeah, it requires that kind of money, I would think.
Yeah, it obviously is a very, very busy spot. Other comments, questions?
The other, pardon me?
I said, Councilor McConnell?
Thank you. The other thing that occurs to me from another week, I think that we were talking about the progression of redoing the streets. East Street is next, then Wood or whatever, and on down the line. But at some point in time, and it seems to me about 10 years down the road, King Street East from Edward to East Street was on tap to be completely redone. Sewers, that if we were going to spend major money on that corner, seems to me it'd be the time to do it, because likely the excavation would be done, because anytime we've seen a corner where we've been doing sewers, there's a huge hole, and I would hate to see us do a big hole and I've already done the streets and have it dug up again, you know, and just the money wasted. So I don't know if we can string it till that point in time and spend a minimal amount of money on it, or if that would not tie in, if that corner has already been done when Edward Street and where King Street were done before. I don't know. Ray, were you there at that time when King Street East was done? I was at Wilford's when King Street West was done, so I don't recall down there. Was that corner all dug up and done new?
Certainly up to the corner was, talking 1978 or something.
I
know you were still in high school then, but
yeah, I suspect it was, Lee, but I'm not certain.
Yeah,
that was from grade 3.
It certainly was dug up in front of the Toronto Dominion Bank. Yeah, and I think it went through the intersection.
Because I don't remember that. I don't remember that being done. I would explain why if you're going back to 78. But yeah, good. Matthew, Nathan, can you comment on that in terms of timing and so forth? Is there anything we need to really look at there for scheduling work like this?
So I think if I remember correctly from the asset management plan, it's slated for late 2020s or early 2030s, that particular block between King Street or Edward Street and East Street. So I believe they're fairly old piping and also need to be upsized. So that's kind of where we are with that. Whatever we would do, we would make it so that we wouldn't want to dig up all of that street now just to dig it up 10 years from now again. So similar to the other intersections where we're running the wires overhead, that sort of thing, that we would be able to do that there. And that's how we would make those particular changes. But certainly when we do that intersection, and even if we only need to do certain parts of it or certain sides of it, then we would take that opportunity to put the in-ground wiring and motion plates and pressure plates and things like that at that point, as opposed to trying to dig it up now, because the expense would just be for naught for having to redo the streets in 8 to 10 years. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good point for sure, just to try to, if it has to be staged, especially major issues with excavation. But I mean, I think we can do a lot of the hopefully the redesign and the study comes back, there'll be a fair bit that can be tweaked down there and adjusted. I'm sure there's going to be a few dollars spent, but hopefully that can be done without getting into the excavation portion of things. And sitting there, maybe it can be left a little bit, because that is it's a tricky intersection, and I don't want to go beyond what's looked at here, because that's going to be here for a while anyways. But that corner's always been a problem with transports mounting the curb, and it's amazing someone hasn't taken the whole front off of Bobby's at some point. We've been awful close at times. I think all four corners have been hit on numerous occasions with transports. We had all that impaired driver that came out of the downtown there. It was 2 summers ago, and took out the one pole completely and just kept on going. And it is a tricky intersection, but I don't know if there's anything else to be added there. We do have those parking spaces that are relatively close on the Bobby's side. A lot of people do park there, run in, get the food, run back out. I think we took one of them, Ray. Didn't we take one of those out a number of years ago? I wonder if we've looked at that, or they've looked at that. And apologies if I've missed that in the report. I did read this over, but there's a lot here. Matthew, do you remember that? If any recommendations regarding the parking on that corner? Because it always has been a blind corner where trucks will come around or vehicles will come around and there's a car parked right there.
And I think we made the adjustment 2 or 3 years ago to the stop bars, which has improved it considerably since then. So I know that in that amount of time, it's only, I think the pole on the northeast side has only been hit once by a transport. It seems that when we pulled back those center lanes, that it's made it a lot better for trucks making that turn onto Edward in particular, but also onto King. So that's certainly, but we would look at that as part of the overall redesign, and just to make sure that there is adequate amount of sight lines as well as turning radius there.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think the bad luck's moved to the south side, because I think both poles on the south side have been clipped since we made those changes. But
it happens regularly that the pedestrian crosswalk in front of Bobby's and the lights, the 3 lights, get hit by transports and off kilter. Our staff are down there at least 3 or 4 times a year, putting them back in the correct position.
So another aspect that'll have to be looked at for that overall redesign, and part of it's just where the building is laid out. It's older town, and every older community has these problem spots. Unfortunately, when the old problem spots run into modern accessibility and modern demands, ka-ching. So this is probably going to be an expensive redesign when it does come in. And that doesn't even get into the electrical and the potential excavation and everything else. Anyhow, so where we are tonight with 6,500, everyone, are we good on that one to move forward? So we'll mark off good on that for item 4. So now on to item 5, a quote for the installation of the PXO Type B at King and Center. Nathan, you have this one?
Yeah, thank you. So you're going to talk. So we did a traffic count at that intersection, and in 8 hours we saw 3,600 vehicles and 34 cyclists and 453 pedestrians. The majority of the cycling again was obviously going east and west on King, and the pedestrians crossing King Street that used the signalized police leg, 119 stories down, and 32 used the unsignalized west leg. So based on the information that they concluded that they said that a type B would be appropriate for King and Center Street, based on those volumes, based on the speed of posted speed of 40 kilometers an hour, and then 3 lanes of traffic with the presence of the parking. So the figure that you see there shows a type B pedestrian crossing in Perth. And so I was, so the time was good. I was actually in Perth on Friday afternoon around 5, 6 o'clock. And it was extremely busy. They had some major activity on the side streets happening, and there was people crossing constantly. And they had the RFB flashing lights, and it was. I felt the level of cover because you had 2 or 3, I guess at least 2 of these crossings, and so you kind of subconsciously felt comfortable that you knew what kind of crossings you're coming up against, and then there's a light at the far end and a light at the other end. So, and lots of people were crossing and it seemed very safe. And these ones have the pole, and then it comes up with the lights are on the flashing, rapid flashing lights are on the poles, and then it comes up with the sign on the top of the middle. Parsons did look at we did specifically ask if they could review it for an all-way stop controlled intersection, and they said that typically that type of intersection would be considered where you have two relatively equal approach roadways that have similar traffic volume demanding characteristics. They can also be considered in cases of sidelines when the minor lane are limited and the traffic signal isn't warranted. But they did specifically say that they're not really appropriate for roadways, truck or bus routes, or they're not appropriate for primary control for pedestrians. And they did mention that what can happen is that if you, with a four-way stop, sometimes if they're not used regularly for, they said they're typically what can happen in a four-way stop, if you want to put them in as a control for pedestrian crossing, what will happen is people won't see pedestrians there much, and then they'll kind of say, well, there's never pedestrians there. They'll kind of run through the red lights. It'll get into that pattern of behavior. So they said it can be more dangerous in some cases. And so what they said, following warrants of major roads, considering the total volume on all intersections, it's 500 vehicles per hour for each of the 8 hours. So I believe that they would do that is if you had 500 vehicles per hour coming from each 4 directions, so it'd be, I guess, 16,000 movements per 8 hours. And then the combined vehicle and pedestrian vehicle on the minor streets exceeds 200 units per hour for the same 8 hours. And then the volume split does not exceed 70-30. So they have very quantitative things that they look at in order to determine whether that's going to be appropriate hardware to put in there for light. So when they did review, here, they said that neither intersection met the volume warrants for justification 1. They said that they didn't meet the warrants for the justification 2, and then the major minor split was 84-16 and 94-6. So still didn't get to that 70-30. So they said in the absence of the need to provide more improved sightlines, they always stop. Controlled intersections weren't suitable for King Street, and it caused delays for the traffic, and then could cause increase in traffic and pedestrian safety concerns. So again, I think it might cause more problems than actually solve problems. They said that they conducted an analysis to determine a full set of traffic lights was warranted, and they said that it still doesn't meet a warrant for a signal for either pedestrians or vehicles in terms of traffic. A signal is only 70% warranted. So again, it's a very quantitative way to figure out. So one of the things that we were recommending is that we would improve those sightlines, and that can be done by taking some of the parking spaces away, and that will be done later this month. And then the traffic study that was completed already, and then we would obtain the quotes to get to see what it costs to put a PXOB crossover to replace what's there, and then some work on the pavement markings, and then the push buttons and audible and the tactile plates again. We'll look at that. At least the audible and the blackboard tactile indicators. We'll look at that, like Council was mentioning, for potentially this year as we install those. And so it would be similar again to what you see in that picture.
Okay, just for expediency's sake, can we just, King and George, essentially exactly the same situation? Were there any changes there? Matthew, were you going to talk about that one? But I mean, why don't we just cover that now, and then we'll discuss both, because I think they're probably pretty linked. I didn't see I didn't see any differences here. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're absolutely correct. And so if we can deal with them both together, then that makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, and thank you to Nathan as well. So we'll look at 5 and 6. These are probably the most controversial locations if you talk to anybody in town anyways. King and Center and King and George. So open it up for discussion and potential recommendations going forward. Councilor McConnell?
Not just these two intersections, but all the intersections we discussed. I think it's interesting to note that 2 or 3 years ago, I can't remember whether it was this term or last, before we eliminated the lights at George and Center and changed them at St. Lawrence, we had the OPP do a free traffic report for us, and their conclusions were exactly the same as what we paid for in this one, that there really were no spots down street that warranted a stoplight or a set of lights, including Edward. It was the only one that was even close. So we've paid for a more extensive report now, a lot more verbiage in it, and it is saying the same thing. So I think we are pretty justified in what we did a few years ago, but now I think it's time to fine tune it. Thank you.
Other
One of
comments?
the things.
Matthew, please.
If I could make a point. So when we were talking about consistency, and we'll get to the St. Lawrence one in a second, which is for all intents and purposes, PXO type B, once we add the rapid flashing and that sort of thing, that if we're talking about consistency, then dealing with it one way on Edward and how we deal with those with kind of the mid blocks and the traffic lights and things like that. And then if you want to be consistent on King Street, then dealing with the PXO with the rapid flashers at King and Center, King and George, and King and St. Lawrence would then help the overall pedestrian traffic understand how to use those, as well as the vehicular traffic being able to understand what they're seeing and what they're coming up to. So I just wanted to make that point, that might be something to consider when we are having a conversation about these particular intersections.
Thanks, Matthew. Good point, the consistency there, because that would mirror in a different way what we'd be looking at Edward Street. Councillor Jansen.
Thank you. The recommendation includes for 5 and 6 to obtain a quote, yet the recommendation inside each one of them is the installation of those PX0B crosswalks. So that's just one thing. I'm wondering if, unless we already know, if at the same time, if we could, because this particular one at Canaan Center, the signal, a traffic light, 70% warranted. If we could get a quote on what a traffic light would cost, then when we do make the decision, once we have the numbers for both, then for the residents and the taxpayers, then they will know not only is it not warranted, the cost is significantly different. Or we might say, well, let's spend that 20, 30,000 and put back a traffic light. You know what I mean?
I think and correct me if I'm wrong, Matthew, Nathan, we're looking at 100K plus, are we not a minimal for full traffic lights? So you're looking at 5 to.
So just to give an order of operation, if we're looking at putting traffic lights back in, we're talking anywhere from 175 to 250,000.
And we're discussing between 20 and 30 here.
Okay.
How firm do we have the 2030, by the way, in terms of the ballpark? Is that fairly solid? Something we got back, or?
That's reasonable, yeah.
Matt, did you hear that? The 2030 is the estimate included in the report. Is that
So it's based on slightly older quotes that we received from a neighboring municipality, and it really depends on if we have to replace the poles or not. So if we have to replace the poles, we're easily going to be up into the 30,000 mark. If we can reuse the poles and we're just looking at installing the actual rapid flashers and that sort of thing, then the 20,000 is more appropriate. So that's why we gave a little bit of a range there. And while at the same time knowing that inflation has thrown everything out the window when it comes to these types of things. So that's why we figure it's in that 20 to 30 range if we can, depending on what we have to replace and that sort of thing. But that's why we want to be also able to go back and get a firmer quote for the next meeting, so that we can say with some level of reasonability that this is what it would cost.
And part of the is a lot of those PXOs are solar now too, so there's a substantial savings in that side. And also.
That's always good whenever we can get away from excavating downtown and all the added hassles that go with electrical hookups. Other comments, questions? That's good with these recommendations. I'm really back and forth in this myself, and I'm not gonna make this a hill to die on or everything. If everyone else is good with this, I have no problem, of course, supporting it. But I think I would ask that maybe we split this off, because I think I've talked to a lot of people, and I always like going with the recommendations, especially when it's provided with such background, and it's very carefully examined. The only thing I would say at Perth, I did a little bit a couple of summers ago. I was there during a festival as well. It was very busy, and these lights, they are very effective, the way the flashers are and everything else. But the one thing I will say, and because it's been a little while since I was just in Perth a couple weekends ago too, but I didn't stop to take a look at this. So Nathan, these crossings in Perth, they're not on four ways, are they? Aren't they all sort of offset to a little bit? I mean, the example clearly is, so you've got one corner here, one corner here, so it's kind of staggered. So there's one place to cross. And that's one of the issues we have downtown with this, is we would be like doing this, we designate one side of the street to cross. The other side would really be, we'd mark it out and everything else. But that doesn't mean people are going to do it, because we've got that problem now where people just don't touch those buttons and just dart out, walk across, run across, what have you. So I don't know how effective, I'm not going to argue the report at all, because these guys are the experts. But I also know whenever I talk to people in town, all I ever hear is either bring back the traffic lights, don't be so damn cheap, it was a money-saving move, blah, blah, blah. People complain about that. You try to explain that there was a rationale behind it. They don't want to hear it. That's one of the reasons I started pushing the four-way stops a year and a half or so ago, and I've kind of stayed with that, and I think I'm going to tonight. And I'm not trying to convince anybody else, but I'm just going to state my take on it. And I would ask that we maybe split this into two motions, because I think I'm going to vote against 5 and 6. But I would support everything else with everyone. But that's just my own opinion on it. I like this. I think it is an improvement, as Lee mentioned. I think it's tweaking it and so on. But I've talked to a lot of people, and I've stuck with the four-way, and I think I'm going to stick with it this evening for the purposes of it. Anyone else have anything else to say on 5 and 6? Right?
I don't see a problem with getting a quote. We're not taking action.
On the four-way?
No,
Or this?
PXO type B.
Yeah, I guess it is just obtaining a quote this evening. You've got a good point on that, because we are putting this back before the, and I haven't been making the clarification in my head, because we are sort of supporting. So I guess, I could support this evening. Thanks for mentioning that. We shouldn't have to bother to support it then tonight. Thank you. Where are you coming?
No, I thought Nathan said that was pretty close to what it was going to cost, 20 to 30,000.
Yeah, but we are going to get the final numbers. Just for clarification, that this is coming back in August for the final. These are the numbers, go or no go, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
That's absolutely correct for 5 and 6. We wanted to make sure that we got the proper quotes, so we knew exactly what needed to replace and not be replaced. And so, that's what you're seeing in front of you this evening. However, when we're talking about Victor and Edward, as well as Park and Edward, the motion this evening would actually be for us to proceed with making those changes, because they're minor in nature and more just cleaning up signage and pavement markings.
Sure. Thank you all for that. So we'll clarify that before we sign off on that final motion this evening, so everybody knows exactly what we're doing. But thank you. Anything further on 5 and 6, Teresa?
Sure, Mayor, so if I could just get clarification, because I know at one time we had the four-way stop when we were transitioning into our current situation, and the feedback from what I recall was quite positive about the four-way stop. Now, this report is saying that it almost has safety issues to promote the four-way stop, which you explained well, and it says right in the conclusions that it's not warranted and it's not advocated. I had a resident email me because he saw that this was on the agenda, and he said, I'm totally against a four-way stop. And so I replied back and I said, okay, like, why? Like, I just had to ask, and I hadn't received a reply yet before the meeting. So how would you, with what you just commented and what Nathan explained from this report, that it's not warranted and it might also be a safety issue, you still are going on with the positive feedback that we experienced, or can I ask where it's coming from?
I just have to, part of it is it's a position I've had for a long time, but that's not, I'm happy to always change my mind if someone puts something in front of me that makes more sense, and hey, prove me wrong, that's great. But I need more, like when it says undue delays for Main Street traffic, which could cause an increase in traffic and pedestrian safety concerns. I'd want to drill down further and ask the Parsons consultant what that means, because you're talking undue delays for Main Street traffic. What does that mean? Does that mean when you're stopping more east-west, you could have rear enders, you could have people blow through the stop signs? I mean, that's certainly possible. People blow through the stop signs now going north-south that either aren't sure they're there or actually anticipate there being a four-way. So they stop and then immediately pull back out because they think the oncoming vehicles going east-west are going to. So, and then there's also, the design is great. I like this format and I think it works extremely well in Perth. I don't think it does here because that's Highway 2. People still do look at that as a cross through, it's not the 401, it's not a highway anymore, it's a county road, but a lot of people don't look at it that way, and people are taking that instead of the 401. So I think there's a difference between that and Perth. And the other part of it for me is we can design it however we want, however the numbers and the experts say. We've got particular issues at those two corners because of history. People are used to having those stop signs there decades, and you're not going to change patterns of behavior based on a formula. So I think you've got to look at the individual issues as well. And I'm not saying maybe Parsons comes back, maybe you guys have something, and I'll change my mind again. Because this one's, honestly see all sides with this, and I'm not trying to convince anyone. But you asked, so that is sort of my thought process on it. Everyone's probably regretting that you asked now, but that is my thought process on it, and I think it is something we've really got to look at, because this is spending now $60,000 plus on two intersections, and people are going to throw it back. You did this, you spent all this money, and you didn't change a damn thing. I'm concerned about that as well.
Yes.
So it all just kind of combines.
And
apologies for going on.
And as a follow-up, it does say in the conclusions here as well regarding them that they may remain as such, like until changes are required. So they are recommending it, but they're not saying, like other things, that it's what we have to do, you know?
And I actually think Lee summed it up great. It's essentially, it's a reiteration of what the OPP provided for us 4 or 5 years ago, whenever it was. And, and I'm not surprised at that. And I had this discussion with Matthew when he said, let's get the traffic count and so on. No problem with doing it, but I kind of figured it would end up the same way. And I just don't think it works for our specific situation. I just don't. And we'll see where it goes. I'm not trying to change anybody's mind, but that's just where I'm at.
Okay, thank you.
So I can speak to a little bit, if I can.
Do we want to continue? Yeah, Matt, go ahead.
It's like 2 minutes, if that's okay. So what Parsons was saying when they made that particular comment is that when you have four-way stops, you want similar amounts of traffic. So when I think of a great four-way stop, I think of Brockville and Windsor and Laurier. And so every time I come up to that four-way stop, there's always somebody at one of the other corners. And that's really, when you're creating a four-way stop, that's what you want, because otherwise what will happen is if you don't have people coming from, let's say, north-south direction, people will start just blowing through it. And that's what their comment was really about, is if they don't see the point, and every time they stop, there's no other pedestrian, there's no other cross traffic from a north-south perspective, then that's when you're going to get that people just becoming, oh, well, I really don't need to stop because it's just a stop for the sake of stopping. And so really that's what they were trying to get at, is that you will have people just ignoring it, trying to get across town quicker because they only see it as an impediment to their progress, as opposed to being a safety feature for pedestrians and cross traffic. And so that's really what they were talking about, because we did have that discussion to say, what are some of the things that you need to consider when you're doing a four-way stop? And that's what they said, is that you're just going to breed non-compliance if there's no one coming from those other directions.
And it's an excellent point. Thanks, Matt. And it's actually one of the reasons Ray and Leo, remember that for this, because this goes back like 2-3 terms now. That was one of the issues of getting rid of the stoplights. We always had the complaints with that because people would actually either blow through the stoplights going east-west, or even worse, cut through the parking lots to avoid it. You'd see that all the time down there. So yeah, I see the point. I just it's not entirely. I'm not going to say I've got the statistical information for this and everything and a full argument to back me up, but I just don't think this fits for those two intersections. But no, I thank you for the added points. Gordon?
So I don't want to belabor this point, but I think the changes we've made to the parking will help.
Yeah.
Right, because that was one of the big concerns, is that couldn't see cars coming and cars going north-south. And is that what that split range is, 8416 to 94.6? Is that what that refers to, the east-west versus north-south?
I believe so, yes.
Must be, yeah.
So yeah, and I know, I mean, when the old lights were there, you'd be going through town at night, and there'd be no cars anywhere, and you sit there for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And if you're a good citizen, you sit there for 2 minutes. If you're not, you blow right through it. But so I understand what they're saying, and I know your point too. But I don't know if it works.
Yeah, I'm back and forth on it myself in a lot of ways, but it's just, this is a tough one. I'll have to think about it, and well, we'll have time anyways. We'll have a month, we'll have some information back, and we'll be able to look at it again in August. Ray, you comment?
Matthew, were you able to get the information from the OPP on the number of accidents we've had since we changed to this system?
So I did have them pull it a couple of years ago, and there's been one that wasn't on King Street. It was actually, or it was someone turning onto one of the side streets. I believe it was at George Street, and so it didn't have anything to do with someone actually crossing King itself. So I will ask them again to update that. But when I did go back and take a look through it, there had only been one incident since we changed that over.
Thank you. Good data to have too. So hopefully, but I will say, well, anything else on 5-6? Good. So 7, and this is King and St. Lawrence, correct? Install signage, correct pavement, parking, and so forth. I'm not sure where we're at in the pecking order. Nathan, if you got this one, or Matt, you have this one.
I can take this one, simply because we kind of combined the last two. And so this one is really just putting things right in terms of extending an arm over the roadway because the pole is a little bit too far back, then changing it out so it's the rapid flashers as opposed to the yellow flashing lights, and then again working with correcting the painting. So those, as well as adding some signage. So really that's what we're talking about at this particular intersection. And if we were to go the same way at the other two intersections, then again, it talks about that consistency from when we're talking about King Street and being able to get pedestrians across it. Thank you.
Thank you. So comments, questions from members of council? Teresa.
Yeah, the first 3 points of adding warning signs and no stopping signs and cross other side signs. Are we not risking what we're trying to avoid on Edward across, like by the high school, of the issue of sign clutter?
So with PXOs, because it's a slightly different type of style from a regular traffic light, so everyone knows how to use a traffic light, or at least you hope they do. And so you want to remove all of that excess signage. Whereas when you're dealing with a PXO with the rapid flashing lights, that's when you actually want to add a little bit more signage so they know where to stop, they know that they need to wait until they stop, and those types of things. So that's why there's a slightly different treatment with the flashing lights versus the actual traffic light.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Other comments on St. Lawrence and King? Good. Okay, I think we're good on 7 there. I will say that I think the RRFBs will make a bit of a difference there, although most people do seem to follow that one. There is a little back and forth there with some vehicles that try to zip through, but in the summer, I've just noticed that it does seem like a lot of people are stopping, even for those that don't push the button. So hopefully that will resolve any added issues. Okay, so in terms of motion on this, so who moved and seconded again?
Councillor Young moved and Councillor Burton seconded.
Okay, thank you, thank you both. So we did talk about the one addition on adding the estimate pricing for the audible at the intersections. Is everyone good with that? I think I had some nods. So if I could ask the mover and the seconder friendly amendment on this, just add that. Thank you. And just for clarification, so we are. Well, the items that were not, item 2 is basically, that's quote the installation that mid block, that's a longer range item. And 4 is the other one that includes some longer range. And 5 and 6 are looking at quotes for the final quote, although we think we're fairly close on the 20 to 30 grand. But this will all come back. The items I just mentioned will come back in August for the final yay or nay from council. They're obviously the bigger dollar items. Correct on all that? We all good in terms of understanding the directions. Matthew, anything else you'd like to add before I call the question on this?
No, I think that's fantastic. It provides us with a great path forward, and we thank you for the discussion.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for bringing this forward. It's a lengthy process, but there's some important items here that it's good to start moving towards a resolution on all of these. So with that, and with the permission of the mover and the seconder for that amendment with regards to the adding the audible, you're clear on the motion. Excellent. So with no further discussion, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carried. So we will resume this discussion and hopefully wrap it quicker than we did tonight, but it's a valuable discussion. And where we are. Yes, we are to 13 resolutions, 13.1s regarding the parking on St. Lawrence Street. I think we can safely withdraw this because we did vote on this earlier. Is everyone good on that? So we'll remove item 13.1 because we've already addressed that. So now we are into bylaws, and 14.1 is site plan agreement for 965 Edward Street North. Recommendation reading of bylaw 32-2022 being a bylaw that authorizes site plan agreement between the corporation of the town of Prescott and Grant Castle Corporation be read and passed, signed by the mayor and clerk, and sealed by the seal of the corporation. Anything on that, Mr. Armstrong? Just over to you for any comments or additions to that.
No, so this is simply the enacting bylaw for the site plan agreement for the one that we discussed earlier in the meeting. And so we're happy to bring it forward. And as I mentioned, they are looking to get moving on by mid-August or late August so that they can have it completely done this fall. Thank you.
Thank you. Any added discussion on that? Actually, I should ask for a mover. I don't think I did that yet. Councillor Young, seconded Councillor Burton. Any further discussion on that? We've already gone over this earlier. Seeing none, all in favor? Motion carried. The bigger one next. 14.2 is sale of surplus land south of the CN rail line. recommendation reads that bylaw 33-2022 being a bylaw to authorize the sale of approximately 4.72 acres of land, legally known as LTAN/S, BLK1, PL 19 Prescott, except PR 177247 Prescott, PIN number 681570311, by the corporation of the town of Prescott to 9695443 Canada Incorporated, be read and passed, signed by the mayor and clerk, and sealed by the seal of the corporation. Could I ask for a move? Moved by Councilor Young, seconded by Councilor Shankar. Mr. Armstrong, comments on this? This has been with us for quite some time.
That's correct, and thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So this is the purchase and sale agreement for the 4.72 acres that is off Boundary Street, south of the CN rail line. And there's a number of conditions that need to be met, including rezoning, building permits, those types of things. And so it will start the public planning process where we'll be able to elicit feedback and understand concerns, as well as hopefully be able to move the overall development forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Armstrong. And just in terms of some of these discussions have obviously, because it is a purchase and sale matter, we've been holding some of these discussions in camera settings, closed sessions. When are we going to be at the point we can actually inform residents about what the potential site plan looks like and so forth? Because those will be the questions that will immediately come out of this meeting this evening with residents, if we of course pass this.
So we expect that the purchaser wishes to get moving on any planning applications for fairly shortly. Obviously, that's also subject to any contractor availability and consultant availability. So we expect probably within the next 4 to 6 weeks that the submissions will start to come in, and that will kick off the formal planning process that will go through the Planning Advisory Committee.
So I guess just for the purposes of this evening, in terms of unveiling, because obviously the questions are going to start as soon as this hits social media and hits the newspapers. What can we say in terms of number of units, what the development actually is? Obviously, it's residential. We can share that. Is there anything else in terms of the particulars there we can come forward with this evening? Or is this something we need to wait, work with the developer on and bring it back?
So I think what we can say is that it's a mixture of medium type of density development, and then somewhere between 50 and 70 units. And so we don't exactly know the exact breakdown. That's still subject to submission and that sort of thing. But certainly we look forward to being able to, once the applications are received and the final site plan is submitted, then we'll be able to share that with the public.
And I suppose something we should clarify as well, in the sale of this, we are committed to maintaining that public access through over to Boundary Street and also the park space to the immediate south, north of Royal. I guess that's that southwest quadrant, correct?
That's correct. So there would be envisioned as a requirement of the purchase, a public park space in that, as well as a connector of a multi-use pathway from Boundary over to Duke Street and the north end of Royal Crescent. So the north end of Royal Crescent was and is to always remain a park, which we will absolutely continue to commit to. And one of the things that once it closes, this particular sale, that we would recommend that the proceeds from the sale be used to further activate the park, in particular at the north end of Royal, so that it becomes a more formal park and more intensive usage of what it is.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much for that. Those are probably the key questions that are going to come out of this: the number of units, what the units are, what's going to happen to the park space there, and the access, because a lot of people do do cross through there now from Prince Street all the way over to Boundary. And I just wanted to note on one other sideline, it's something that's been with, if this passes this evening, it's something that's been a topic of conversation here all along, is to ensure there's good proper separation between any new developments and existing houses. And we've been committed to that all along, both this development and anything else we're looking at in terms of housing. So I know there may be some residents that aren't going to take that as too much solace tonight with development occurring not too far from their front doors and back doors today. But it is something that is definitely, that has been on our mind all along through this process. So stay tuned, I think would be the, if we pass this, and we will have further and fuller information coming forward. With that, I apologize to everyone, but I did think we should get some clarifications out there for the public. So I'll open it up for discussions. I see Councillor Young with his hand up.
I just have one question. I believe I know the answer, but by moving forward with the sale of the property, we have seen a potential site plan. We are not agreeing to a site plan tonight. We are not agreeing to the exact development, the way it was sketched out for us, correct?
Yes, I think that's why we just the raw number of units, the mixed use, and the parkland, I think, and the privacy and noise issues that we've looked at. I think of that probably the only takeaways we can really get into because of that exact reason.
Okay, so down the road, with the site plan, there will be public input and the potential of much opposition or no opposition. So we will have further input into the final configuration of the units, correct? We are not agreeing to that tonight.
Yeah, we're not agreeing to any absolute format.
Thank you.
There is certainly room for public input and so forth as we move towards that. And Matthew, the schedule on this, the developer's not talking about building till 2024, correct?
That is my understanding, correct?
So there is a little bit of runway here for people when we're not you're not going to have the bulldozers in there tomorrow or anything like that. Folks can rest assured on that. And people around this council table will be listening to any feedback as we move forward. This is a valuable step, and I'm not going to say it's a first step because we're quite a ways further along there, but it's not the final step either. So thanks very much for that clarification, Councillor Young. It's a good point to make. Other comments and questions? Councillor McConnell.
In response to Councillor Young over there, this has come before us for a while now, and I think if you are expecting the purchaser to change his development from what has been presented in any great number, you are going to be sadly mistaken. The other thing I point out is I think it is very dangerous for us to be indicating numbers of units, as Matthew has said, when that number does not adequately reflect what we have seen previously. It does not make us look good down the road. I'm not going to be voting against or in favor of this, and you all know the reasons why. It's been discussed before. But I would like to point out something that I feel needs changing in here because I think it is going to be approved. And that is on page 115, item number C. And it reads, the purchaser will be solely responsible for any present and or future costs required to install / construct services as may be required to satisfy the purchaser's particular needs. I think that should be altered to read additionally, to install, construct services, or modify or relocate. And the reason I think that should be in there is because I'm reminded of the property that we sold that was adjacent to the old OPP station in the north end of town, and a fire hydrant that belonged to the town had to be relocated there. And I believe it was our expense, and I think it was in the neighborhood of $45,000. There is a large sewer, I believe, runs through there. I think it's a storm sewer. And if that sewer just doesn't happen to work out as far as the development goes, I don't want the town to get stuck for having to move or alter that sewer in any way. So I think the words modify or relocate should be added to that paragraph. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Armstrong and Mr. Richard, comment on that?
Certainly. So any town infrastructure that would need to be moved would be the responsibility of the developer, not the responsibility of the town. We've shared exactly what runs through that property to the best of our knowledge, and so they've indicated that they would be moving or working around it as opposed to moving it. That is the main sewer line that runs from north to south underneath the railroad tracks, and so it's not an option really to move it at this point without an extensive cost, and so which the town would not borne in any way, shape, or form.
Okay, but is it possible to just add that single clause that Councilor McConnell is suggesting?
We have
We can do that.
And I was under the impression there was one running from east to west on the south side from
Prince Street.
Boundary Street to Prince, intersecting the one coming underneath the railroad tracks.
So there's a water main that runs from Boundary over to Prince Street. It's running in the unopened road allowance. So, and the town would maintain the unopened road allowance, it being a town property. And so there's, as far as I can recall, there's only the one sanitary sewer line that runs through that property.
Thank you. Ray, you want to comment?
I just wanted to make sure I understood page 115, item D.
Something. Sorry, Sam.
What are you asking again? So
He was asking if it's D or C.
it's C.
Page 115, first of all.
So C and D is just mentioning the fact that if there
No, Ray, what I was referring to, Todd, if I may, is in C.
C.
Yeah,
Just adding modify or relocate to install, construct, right?
exactly.
Okay, thank you.
So friendly amendment on the motion, then to just add that amendment, add that change to 1.111-C, modify or relocate to where it says install connect. Good. Okay. And permission from who moved this again? Okay, so permission from the mover and the, okay, so we're all good. So we'll add that change to 1.11.1C. Further discussion on the motion overall and the land, sale of the lands.
Mayor Todd, I am going to call for a recorded vote on this.
Sure. Any final comments before we do proceed with the recorded vote from anyone? I'm gonna note myself, I do support this. I do think we do need some residential development in town. There's some key areas where a little bit of infill certainly won't hurt us. But I will, reiterate what I said earlier and what Councillor Young mentioned. This is not the final step here. We are, of course, open to feedback and so forth from residents. Please, be a little patient with this process as it moves forward. I think the development should be a very, very strong addition to the town of Prescott overall and the neighborhood, quite frankly. So please bear with us on this. More information will be forthcoming. Development, you're not going to see groundbreaking likely till the spring of 2024 thereabouts. And this is not going to be rushed through. We are going to take our time with it and allow for all the proper and public process to unfold. So with that, Ms. Velkin.
Councillor Burton,
Yes.
Councillor Jansen,
Yes.
Councillor McConnell,
No.
Councillor Ostrander,
Yes.
Councillor Shankar,
Yes.
Mayor Todd,
Yes.
Councillor Young.
Yay.
Item passes 6 yeas, 1 nay.
Thank you all. And again, we will have more information on that for both ourselves and for the public in the not too distant future. So on 14.3 transfer payment agreement, the ISIP Green 2021 grant program recommendation reads that bylaw 34-2022 being a bylaw to authorize a transfer payment agreement between Her Majesty the Queen and Right of Ontario as represented by the Minister of Infrastructure and the Corporation of the Town of Prescott be read and passed, signed by the Mayor and Clerk and sealed by the seal of the Corporation. Could I ask for a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Jansen, seconded by Councillor Burton. Mr. Armstrong, a little update for the folks at home on what we're doing here with the ISIP Green project. Grant.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So we put this application in under the Green Funding Program, and it had to deal with water projects in particular. This is to replace the water tower, which we estimate to be a total of $6.9 million, of which the Ontario and Canadian government will be providing approximately $5 million. So fantastic news that we were able to receive and successful with that much funding, and that we'll be able to move that forward. We will embark upon our planning, and we already have started that. And then we would look to put the tender out probably later this year or early next. Shovels in the ground in 2023, and likely finalize the project in 2024. So as I mentioned, we're very appreciative that we were successful with this. This was a joint project between us and the Township of Augusta, and we certainly appreciate the Township of Augusta coming to the table and supporting us in this application as well. So without further ado, thank you very much, and we certainly appreciate the support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Armstrong. Open it up for comments, questions. Really successful project overall. Matt really said it all. Big thanks to Augusta. This is actually the arena before this, and now the water tower. We've really seen some big successes already to the tune of basically $15 million in provincial federal grant funding for the arena and now the water tower. And a lot of this is based on that partnership with the Township of Augusta. Goes to show what those partnerships can accomplish, along with a whole lot of lobbying and great work by our staff to ensure that we had the best possible applications. But, for a town our size to pull together $15 million of 9.7, 9.8 for the arena, another 5 here. You've got 3.2 or so private donations for the arena. I mean, you've got almost $30 million in projects happening in that one little area in the northwest quadrant of town, and it's astonishing for a town our size to be able to secure this money and to do all this. And a lot of people in town were worried when we committed to the rink before the water tower, because we had a lot of, when that whole engineering report came out about the water tower, that we did need to replace it in the next 5 or 6 years. People were very concerned about that and said, well, we've got a plan here, bear with us. And it's nice to be at this point where within the next 12, 18 months or so, we'll have a lot of everything pretty much finished back there. So it's exciting times. Any further final comments? With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Thanks all. And we do have one more bylaw this evening. 14.4 is asset management policy. The adoption of the asset management plan we did look at previously. So the recommendation is a bylaw 35-2022 being a bylaw to adopt an asset management plan for the corporation of the town of Prescott, be read and passed, signed by the mayor and clerk, and sealed by the seal of the corporation. Can I ask for a movement, please? Moved by Councillor Ostrander, seconded by Councillor Jansman. Matthew, Nathan, any comments on this? This is the end of a bit of a process as well.
So we certainly appreciate council's patience in working through this, and this being a guiding document for the next at least 5 to 10 years that as we move forward. One thing that we did want to note, Councillor McConnell, when he was going through it with a fine-tooth comb, did note that it states in there that 100% of the properties are connected to water and sewer. And obviously that's not true for, I believe, 6 or 7 of the properties. The ones north of the 401, obviously, as well as the town operations building has a septic tank or septic system to it. So we will make that one minor adjustment and make that notation. And we thank you for bringing that forward, Councillor McConnell.
Good catch, for sure. Discussion, comments, questions? Seeing none, and it's almost 9 o'clock. That would probably explain why. So seeing no comments on that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion is carried. Thanks, everyone, and thanks to staff on that. It's a great blueprint for future efforts in terms of our asset management. Really lays things out well. 15 new business. Anyone have any new business to bring forward tonight? Seeing no. 16 notices of motion. Anyone have a notice of motion for tonight? Oh, mayor's proclamations. Nothing this evening. So that does take us to 18. Closed session. We do have 2 items there, and as noted earlier, we're just going to reverse those. So we deal with the closed session minutes after the purchase and sale, just to not that it probably matters much. We probably our guests are long asleep probably by now. But if we do we have them ready to go? I assume.
The minutes?
No, the guests. So
Yep.
I did see that they're okay, because I did see Mr. Paquette was on a little bit earlier. So okay, sounds good. So we will look at the closed session now. Recommendation: we moved into the closed session at 8:49 p.m. To address matters pertaining to 18.1 purchase and sale. That's handled under section 239(2)(c) of the Municipal Act. Proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality. And 18.2 is the approval of closed session minutes. And we are also asking the CAO clerk, director of operations, deputy clerk, and economic development officer remain in the room.
That'd be tough. He's on the East Coast.
We'll remain virtually in the room. It's actually a good point for the motion, actually, to add virtually. Anyways, I think we know the intent of it anyhow. So
You also include Steve Paquette and Jim Doris in the motion to remain for 18.1.
yeah, and I did have a question on that, but which is why I didn't do it actually, but that's okay. So we do have 2 guests as well to remain in the room this evening, and Steve Paquette and Jim Doris, who will be speaking to item 18.1, that purchase and sale. Could I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Burton, seconded by Councillor Ostrander. We'll take, actually, how long are we going to be with this? Do anyone have any? Because we're almost at the 3-hour mark. Does anyone need a? Street lights. Let's hope not, but there could be some. Let's take 5 minutes then. So we'll just move the motion. We'll say 8:55 to move into the closed session. So just give our guests a chance to come back as well. So can I have a mover for that, please? Moved by Councillor McConnell, second by Councillor Shankar. All in favor? Thanks, everyone. So we will break till 8:55 and then come back with the closed session.